Alright, we are recording.
Lycanthropes, varianthropes, bovine thropes. Speak to Mr. Bovine Jovi. What's that? Bovine Jovi? Bovine Jovi.
No.
Toby Wong. Toby Wayne. Motherfucking Charlie Chan. I got Madonna's. Such a Stubbe. Captain Stubbe? The Love Boat?
Or Peter Stump.
Oh,
Or Scoob.
yeah.
Why is there...
Adam Goldberg?
Is that Adam Goldberg?
I know he played him in like some weird History Channel thing.
That's weird.
Yeah, it was a very weird choice.
Um,
The Hebrew Hammer as
yeah, a little odd.
Ugh.
Here's a picture of a werewolf in a sauna. Burning Man Festival with werewolves in them. And the, oh yeah, and there's the infamous picture from that book where it's a guy on all fours. Yeah, there's a severed head behind him.
Yeah, that's a scene party.
Yeah. And it's not even 9 a.m.
We eat more babies before 9 a.m. than most people do. Not like that.
Oh, the Holy Roman.
Yeah. Hey, everybody! This is the Kooks Pranks of the Class Podcast. I'm Mike.
I'm Matt.
And today, we're both very excited because today we are talking about werewolves. Not just the silly movie kind,
Wolfman's got nards.
not just that. We're talking about some real life cases of, at the very least, clinical. We're going to cover two particular cases that are quite gruesome. One more so than the other, I think. But the other is not without its own strange merits and weird little side notes. Also, in today's forecast, we have got coverage of, we're going to talk a little bit about the Berserkers and wolf warriors and psychedelics from back in the days. I mean, way back in the day. We're going to talk a little bit about the bestial nature of man. We're going to talk a little bit about the cynocephaly from myth, quote unquote, legend, quote unquote, folklore, quote unquote. We're going to talk about some feral children. We're going to talk about the potentiality for real life werewolves. We're going to talk about the Dogman a little bit. We're going to talk about a possible real life werewolf attack that occurred here in our home of Texas not too long ago.
In Hunt County.
Yeah,
Of all
very,
places.
very close to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been looking forward to this episode as well. The werewolf is particularly one of my favorite monsters. It's the one I feel the most kinship to. I was bit by a dog a long time ago, and ever since then, it's just kind of,
Superpowers.
yeah, it's just felt natural.
Did you get mauled by a tiger?
It was a dog.
Huh?
It was a big dog.
So, the particular real-life monsters that we're going to be covering today, perhaps you've heard of them. First up is one Peter Srubbe. He's got a shit ton of different last names, so it's really kind of weird to peg down, but I think Stubbe is the...
Well, why does pegging have to be involved in this, Mike? I thought that's...
Strike that comment from the record. Come on, we're better than that.
Okay.
No, yeah, he's got like 5 or 6 ways to spell his last name. I see it different all over the place. But I think Stubbe is the main way, Stubbe.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's to throw people off the scent.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a particularly heinous case of real-life werewolfism. And then we're also going to cover a guy, or, well, it's complicated. A fella by the, I guess, see, I'm doing it again.
A pansexual being by the name of...
I think intersex is the word that they use. I think that's the correct terminology. But he was later raised as a male. So, I don't know. I guess that's kind of why I'm defaulting to it. Manuel Blanco Romasanta, a.k.a. El Sacamenteca, which leads into some other fucking weird places like we did last time. So yeah, we've got quite a show for you.
Yeah, we even got This Week in What the Fuck Is That? And, maybe even a couple little tidbits. Like, what would you even call that segment? Like Jerry Springer's Thoughts?
Well, I don't know. We kind of like settled into a thing now to where, we catch up on the week. And then we sort of launch into most of our main topics. Or at least we cover our biographies. And then we sort of launch into, this is a good laydown for new listeners too, I guess.
That is correct.
we do our biographies of the subjects we're covering. And then that kind of takes us into weird places that are sort of like the sociocultural implications or tangentially related topics of just general weirdness. And then we kind of close out the show with, we have been doing a dash of true crime here and there.
A little bit of
It's usually kind of related in some way, or it comes about, pretty organically. We're not just like shoving a true crime story into this audio sandwich, but it kind of just can't be helped sometimes because it's so interrelated, especially during this Halloween season. Yeah. Well, there's no escaping crime. But because this is our spooky Halloween season and the real life monsters we're covering, it does lend itself to talk of true crime very easily.
I will insert this one fact. Before the Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast podcast, tons of werewolf cases all throughout Europe. Post Kooks, Cranks, Iconoclast show, hardly any. So
really?
Yeah, and I'm not saying we had anything to do with it. I'm just saying there's the data, examine it, and love it.
Correlation may be causation sometimes. You never know.
Yeah.
But
we
got it out of that economic slump with the huge opioid epidemic. I'm not saying there's a connection, but there might be a connection. I don't know. That's just my own weird... Woo! Opioid epidemic! Open this piece.
The Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast podcast does not.
So gotta catch up on the week. What happened to you?
Insane weakness. Well,
this week in whackness.
Yeah. So you know how sometimes you die, and
it happens.
Yeah. And the worst part about dying, aside from all the stuff that happens already, is that you don't get to delete your search history.
And search history,
You know, because it's not like it's rigged to your heart where it'll just delete everything as soon as the heart stops.
Like Dick Cheney's is.
Yeah, or Jason Wynn and Spawn.
Yeah. That's where Dick Cheney got the idea.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah. Man, Todd McFarlane shaping the world.
Or maybe vice versa. I don't know.
So this man in, I think it's Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
He died at 55 in his apartment, and the landlord was asking if anyone had seen this guy around, and they're like, well, we better call the cops and do a welfare check on him.
Yeah.
And the cops go in there, and they're like, yeah, there's a body in there, and there's a lady, we think. They're trying to give him mouth-to-mouth process, like, seeing if he's alive, trying to get him. And he's like, yeah, no. The medical examiner showed up and pronounced him dead at 55.
Okay.
And he said, y'all said there was a lady here too? And he said, oh no, it turns out it's just a real doll. And yeah. And he's like, oh, okay, well, that's okay. And
in the grand scheme of like horrible shit that could be found post-mortem in your life, I think a real doll isn't really all that bad.
Yeah, it's not like he cares anymore, but...
Yeah.
So it gets stranger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so...
There's not like a bunch of knife wounds in the real doll or anything.
No, just the normal stuff you would find in there, I would say. Anyways.
Take it apart and throw it in the dishwasher.
So, yeah, you got to remove some parts. The dishwasher safe. So he's like, what do you mean a real doll? He's like, well, go look in the bedroom. And he goes and looks, and it's like, oh.
And then it moved.
And then he said, hey, I heard you're single. All right.
Who is this, the detective?
In
your little scenario?
In my little playlet, it's the medical examiner. This is just my little playlet. He's like, hey, all right, I'll be coming back for you later, baby. And so they pack up and leave.
What's your name? Polyurethane?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. That's another pop-up character. So he calls the landlord later that night and is like, hey, we need to do a biopsy swab on that real doll. And the landlord said, what? Is that even a thing? Get a warrant and we'll talk about it. Hangs up the phone and doesn't think anything of it. He's finishing up their business for the day.
Landlord's hitting that.
It's a real love parallelogram there. And,
the Octagon.
yeah, I love Octagon. Ooh. But, so, guys, the landlord's packing up for the night and locking up, and he hears a weird noise, And he's like, well, that's fucking weird. That's coming from that place that they had the guy die earlier today. And he goes over there, and the deadbolt's locked. He's like, well, that's fucking weird. Why is this locked up here? And he unlocks it, and the chain is locked. So he gets the chain undone and gets in there, and who does he find? Allegedly. Who does he find? The medical examiner. And quote-unquote disheveled clothing. Making love to the love doll.
In flagrante.
And full Legrante.
Legrante.
And just like you are now, dear listener, that landlord was mortified. And now that guy is going to prison.
Rightfully so. The medical examiner is?
He's going to prison.
See, this is extra weird because there was a real doll, and I thought something was going to happen there, but this is like Houdini level master of misdirection, because the medical examiner ended up making familiarity with the
pots and pans and styrofoam, making things alive, and oh my god.
So he was being overly familiar with the owner of the real doll, not the real doll.
Oh, he was doing the thing to the real doll. He broke into his apartment and started doing that thing to the love doll.
Yeah, we know what it is.
And I get
having tea, playing tic-tac-toe,
hiding the salami.
Things you do with a girl.
Yeah. I think the part to take away from all this is if you're a medical examiner, you probably already have a lot of sideways things happening on your daily life.
You've already stolen someone's wallet.
Maybe.
Probably.
Allegedly. But to steal a dead man's love doll girlfriend, that is just, that is lower than whale shit,
Wow. Well, I don't know. See, you had me for a second there. I thought you were saying that he was, doing some necro stuff.
Romancing?
Yeah, necromancing. So, I don't know.
They dodged.
Once again, in the grand scheme of things, this is not as bad as it could be, but still, yes, it's pretty bad.
Can you even call it a victimless crime? It's...
Yes.
He did break into someone's house.
Well, yeah,
for the explicit
that.
purpose. That's... I get that it's a girl, but
there's certain people who often ask, like, how is this a crime? And there are aspects of
weird.
This that, yes, it's a crime. There's B&E, and I ain't talking bacon and eggs. And
bacon and eggs.
There's a B&E of an apartment, and there's a B&E of a real doll. So,
I'm just saying that I think that guy is already kind of off his rocker.
Oh, yeah.
And then, to be like, hey, baby.
There's stories of people sending those real dolls back to the factory with all kinds of knife wounds and just people it's a god-awful peek into the darkness of the human psyche. And at least they're doing it to real dolls, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better than hurting a person.
Yeah.
I would think.
This is, this is exactly what we talk about when we say, technology is propelled forward by, well, I don't know if pornography isn't necessarily the right word, but that's how DVD players and shit came into such prominence. It's true. Look it up. And the internet as well. The internet wouldn't be
the cats,
the monolithic entity it is today if it weren't for pornography. So,
but that's the weird thing I saw.
Thanks, porn.
What did you see?
Man, I've been looking into a lot of, other than doing werewolf research, etc., and also on more or less psychopaths, etc. Because that's the equivalent. We'll get into that. I've been looking a lot into psychogeography. It's pretty fucking weird. It's pretty awesome though. It's like basically the best way I can explain it. And like we may do, if I could find people like some subjects who are closely enough associated with this and some associated ideas, we may do an episode down the road. But basically it's how, like, give me a big city. Just throw me a big city.
Chicago.
Chicago? Okay. So Chicago has like its own mental space, like its own psychic atmosphere, like every place does. So Chicago's like psychic atmosphere would be filled with like, 1920s gangster shit, probably modern day gangster shit, crime we figure into it a lot. It's the Windy City. I do believe that there's also sort of been some weird Masonic and secret society stuff that goes way back. It's kind of just like the psychic imprint and landscape of a city or place. Like, my buddy's in LA right now, and he was like looking out over the Hollywood Heights, and he's like, you could just feel the scum, like the horrible, weird, fucked up things that have happened out there in those houses. Just like it permeates the atmosphere. And things like there's this concept called the genius loci, I believe is how you pronounce it. But it means basically spirit of place. So like a really, really good example of media that talks about this is Alan Moore's From Hell, the whole Jack the Ripper story that he did.
Yeah.
Because they go on a whole like psychogeographical tour of London. They take a look at all the like weird pagan monuments from before Christianity settled in, and just the history of a place, and how it's basically psychogeography would basically be like the interaction between the spirit of the place and your mind/spirit. So it's a very interesting idea. Like you could take a city like Las Vegas, and it's all gambling and gangsters and
Sex
fear
workers.
and loathing, and and the older a place is, obviously, like the more history it's got to it. So it's pretty interesting shit, man. I don't know. There's some other stuff that plays into it too, like what's it called? Like ley lines and like ritual landscapes and like standing stones, like smaller versions of what is it? Stonehenge. Like when you find like weird like old pagan sites that they just look like rocks and stuff, but it's like meant to be that way, or stuff that's set up and calculated to reflect the sky and astronomical landscapes and things like that. It's pretty interesting, man. It's it goes pretty deep, and then you get into stuff like megalopolymancy, which
Say the word again.
Megalopolymancy. Megalopolymancy.
Okay.
It's kind of like necromancy, but replace necro with megalopolis. So it's like the magic of interacting with a city, I guess, or using a city to your advantage. Oh man, I don't know why I didn't think of this one. There's an architect, he was an architect named L'Enfant, who was like the guy who set up how Washington D.C. is planned. It's supposed to be all pentagrams and Masonic shit or whatever, etc. National treasure horse shit.
Yeah.
But
I know it's missing part of the star.
Yeah, it does have a weird setup. I mean, but if you are to like take like bigger cities or suburbs, also especially, and sort of zoom out and look at them from Google Earth, I find it weird how like cities and shit often look exactly like circuit boards out of computers and shit. They look very similar on a lot of like occasions. So it's just this weird, I don't know, like cities as circuit boards and kind of
a lot of that goes
strange
back
connections.
to a lot of that goes back to the original kind of city planning they did after independence, at least here in the U.S.
After 1774 independence?
1776 independence.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
Is
like
yeah,
like part of the.
I'm thinking of 4th of July.
So like I think it was Jefferson. I'm probably wrong, but as Jefferson is like, yeah, you got to if you're going to be a township, you have to have at least space for one public school and one church, and your city planning maintenance, kind of your city hall kind of thing, like
Yeah.
So everything kind of it looks
and then
pattern.
Uniform,
Yeah.
yeah. And then there's like the weird parts of like city planning and cityscapes that no one really thinks about. Excuse me, like shit pipes and all the invisible systems and architecture that go into building a city or under the city or through the city that like it's the infrastructure no one really thinks about. Like I said, how Dallas has a ghost station along our rail line. It sort of plays into like urban exploration and modern ruins and things like that. So like it's a very cool like whole little like rabbit hole of just environmental, not like your environment surrounding you, not ecological, but like your environmental interactions and things like that, and like the weird spirit of place and how cities have personalities and things like that. Pretty cool shit, dude. If you're interested in it, check out, just look into psychogeography and kind of take it from there. It'll take you to some pretty sweet places. I will try to find some stuff to like cover it somewhere down the road because it's super interesting. It plays into like architecture and just all kinds of sweet shit. So, yeah. But, well, we came for blood. And we want blood!
Blood.
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 Blood. Oh, man. That was like a Muppets routine. Except fucked up because we were saying blood.
Yeah. Like animals. No, like Animal, the drummer. Yeah.
That's the baby one. A lot of weird, loud, annoying noises this episode.
Yes.
At least coming out of me. I know that much. Let's see what else happens. I might sing the Werewolf of Paris, France. The Werewolf of
yeah. You know what's so
of the Saturn, Centerville, 5 Point Crossways,
yeah,
etc. Yeah,
that area.
Yeah.
So werewolves have actually been a thing throughout all of human history. In fact, I think since the first wolf met the first man, they're like, "Hey,
yeah,
this is gonna be great."
Arguably, you could say that there was a time when modern man, Homo sapiens sapiens, was living amongst, other speciated offshoots of man. So there were some that were more bestial. I can only imagine what some of the more fucked up interactions could be like back in those very, very, very olden times.
Ye olden times.
Yeah.
So before we get into our two characters of note, a little background I feel would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So werewolves have existed pretty much throughout all of Europe and Asia.
Africa and South America. Or at least some equivalent, maybe not necessarily always a wolf, but
some form of shape-shifting or
yeah,
animality.
The word for, like, you have lycanthrope for wolf, but if it's any other animal, you can basically file it under the word therianthrope. And then take it from there, like, depending if you want to use a specific animal, like a werecow would be a bovinethrope.
Mr. Bovine Joni himself.
But yeah, therianthropes.
That's who the kids like these days.
That's what you would also call That's what you'd also call the Egyptian gods who have like animal heads. They called them that also.
Like Anubis.
Yeah. Or there's one that's like a bug, like just a bug for a head.
Just a scarab.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
a cool one. Freaky.
Have
I'd
to
be
look
more
at that
freaked
one.
out by a giant bug-headed person than I would be a jackal-headed person, I think.
Look at me! So anyways, did you guys know, I actually titled this, Terror in France. So you know it's good. You
Yeah.
know? Lots of stuff scares them. Mostly.
I heard there's ladies dancing in their undies.
Mm-hmm. They got that phallic, awful tower. And all kinds of weird stuff over there. So, this one instance is from 1595 to 1615. The government of France attempted to pacify its people by imprisoning any suspected or affiliated with, including the case of a young man from Anjou who was imprisoned for life in Bordeaux in 1603. So anyone they thought that could even be remotely associated with
Werewolfism.
werewolf lycanthropy.
Was their name Grenier or something like that? you have their name handy?
I think I'm working my way down to that.
Okay.
So typically, most of these cases were nonsense, and yet a high number of cases typically involved cannibalism, which apparently was a really big problem in France.
Yeah, especially periods of famine and plague and.
Well, Mike, everyone gets famished every now and again.
Yeah, but I mean, you get hungry. I mean, there's no food to go around. Shit happens.
French people, ironically, got hungry enough to eat a horse, and some people still eat horses on Sunday. I'm not being mean. That's just a fact.
There was actually I think it's in France.
Not
too long ago. No, there was like a weird string of unexplained horse mutilations. Kind of like how we have cattle mutilations here, but there were like horse mutilations all over France a few years back.
Fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Poor horse.
Yeah.
Any hoozle. Most of these cases could be sourced by the witch hunt. In fact, from 1595 to 1624, the country of France was inundated with werewolves, according to record keepers and people on the internet that I sourced this from.
Yeah, basically if they wanted to get your ass, if you were a woman, you were a witch, and if you were a man, you were a werewolf.
Yeah, they had to have special superpowers.
Yeah.
Yet for some reason they never manifested themselves when they needed it.
Yeah, right.
How weird is that?
That's gonna come into play later with my guy as well.
So it wasn't until 1653 that logic overran fear and the insanity ended. Generally, by
temporarily.
Temporarily, of course. These things have their spurts. By 1650, lycanthropy was treated more like a mental illness than anything else. Like it's somebody they just snapped and went crazy and decided that they would go out and go on a fucking rampage.
It's basically it's kind of the precursor to what we today call serial killers, and there's always been kind of with most werewolf cases back in the olden times, there was usually like a weird sexual component, or I guess before the term serial killers came around, they called them
sequential killers.
Well, that or like psychosexual maniacs or whatever, like stuff like that. Like it kind of is the same thing. They just didn't have the modern verbiage that we use today.
So these descriptions that me and Mike have just edified you with are mostly considered the Western style. For some reason, France cultivated this idea of the werewolf as a beast man. Mm. And whereas if you travel just a little bit further east into the Balkans, Romania and Hungary,
Transylvania,
Romania, Hungary, and all that, the Carpathian Mountains, it changes a little bit, right? They actually are somewhat synonymous with vampires, except they're not out to get your daughters for a good time; they're out to eat them.
Yeah.
And whereas France handled their werewolf problem by usually burning people or knocking their heads off, the Eastern European vampire/werewolf, they were really scared that this thing would come back.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not uncommon to find steel rods bent in the horseshoe shape and nail them down into the coffin.
Preventative measures.
Yes. They call it a PM. And you should do regular maintenance and do PMs on your coffins and corpses that are even suspect.
Put a little bell.
Yeah, even
in case you buried Uncle Salamanca alive. Yeah, if you go actually even further east, if like when you get to like China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, they kind of have a lot of the same legends, except they replace the wolf with the fox. And it's usually women who are...
Is that why we say they're foxy?
That might be.
If she was a fox, she would be La Renard and have only her wit and cunning to execute all those people that she wants to eat.
If she were president, she'd be Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
The fox was much more prevalent, and it was known for being, it had more cunning, and it was usually women who were associated with it, but you could also be possessed by a fox spirit, which sort of like gave way to potential like shape-shifty type, closer to the werewolf that we have in Western culture.
It's a real Cinderella story because now they have a network on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Australian madman.
So in France, because we're kind of close to where I want to hit, the Beast of Gévaudan in the south central France, very crime-ridden area.
Yeah.
From 1764 to 1767.
Must check my crack chateau.
It was a rough neighborhood. There was
Yeah.
a lot of violence.
Pretty much all of Europe was a rough neighborhood.
I'd say so.
Back in those days.
It was not good because there was a killing spree by this Beast of Gévaudan, killing roughly 80 men, women, and children.
Damn, I didn't know it was that much.
Yeah, and that's, what did I say, a 3-year span? It's not even like a full 3 years either, probably. He's probably just like, dude, that's like, what is there, 52 weeks in a year?
Mhm.
So that's like, I don't even know, man, like one every 2 weeks or less. I don't know the math. I'm not good at that.
That's
We went to public school.
That's going to railroad us too long to figure
Cheryl?
out without a calculator in front of us.
So we move a little bit to, I know most people aren't going to like it, but France's more successful brother, the Holy Roman Empire. I only say it because they're all descended from Charlemagne, like most of Western Europe. The Holy Roman Empire.
He's the Genghis Khan of white people.
Kind of. If you have Western European DNA, you probably share a chromosome with
Yeah.
Charlemagne.
Actually, now that I think about it, I think Genghis Khan is also the Genghis Khan of white people. So, I mean, he's just one of those people that was a prolific breeder, I suppose.
They've proven Genghis Khan has at
Genghis,
least...
I forgot.
Yeah, I do it. I'm sorry. They've proven that he has at least 32 million living descendants.
Well, I guess Alexander the Great wasn't really like that, was he?
I don't think he was very prolific, if that's what you're asking.
As a breeder?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess not.
But
I'm just trying to think of like other world conqueror type folks in history who did a lot of
I think
non-consensual.
I think Julius Caesar's kid got the axe, or no, the asp, not the axe.
For doing stuff like that?
No, for being a baby and having a claim to the dictatorship of Rome.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I could see how that'd be a problem for the guy in charge.
Yeah, he was dating that damn Cleopatra.
Oh, yeah.
And they had a kid, Caesarion.
Can I get a Caesarean salad?
Anyways, the Holy Roman Empire, a minimum of 9 works were written on the subject of lycanthropy between 1649 and 1679.
Damn.
Excuse me. The stronghold of these beliefs were in the Austrian and Bavarian Alps. Enter one Mr. Stubbe.
Hi, Captain Stubing. Howard Gopher and Doc.
Who was
Old
executed?
Stubby.
Yeah, who was executed in 1589 because he was the Werewolf of Bedburg.
Oh, Werewolf of Bedburg.
This guy is
Pretty goddamn horrific.
heinous.
Yeah.
In fact, let me tell you, if Halloween was a cologne, it would be Peter Srubbe, all right? Because it stinks, it's terrible, and it's full of cannibalism. And
Stube by Calvin Klein.
which ironically was where he was.
It's made with real bits of people, so you know it's good.
Yeah,
Silent breed is people!
he. Well, you know, people business is our business, so
And business is good.
yeah. So ironically, he was actually beheaded on October 31st, 1589, in Cologne, Germany.
They chopped his head off?
Well, first, it was the criminal penalty for killing 18 people, confirmed 18 people,
Yeah.
is death by breaking.
Oh, on the wheel or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
God, you gotta love medieval torture devices to get
Right.
people to comply.
Mm.
It's always got
Hey.
the pageantry of
Yeah.
executions, man.
Hey, man, it's like we said before, you know, that's the Friday night movie.
And
That's public execution and chill. That's what it was back in the day.
what is that? A PE? Let's call it Pecs and Chill. You guys want to go Pecs and Chill? So this guy is very good at his job, apparently.
Don't
They have-
vomit yet.
I know, I'm trying not to. It's just so, you know, The nerd is pretty, they're pretty cool because they say that this German farmer, alleged serial killer, was accused of werewolfery, witchcraft, and cannibalism.
Mm-hmm.
But, where does a guy find the time to be a farmer, a werewolf, a witchcraft, and a cannibal, and a werewolf?
It's probably one of those medieval helicopter parents.
Telling you, man. Activities make structure and to make kids better. And according to...
Actually, he was a horrible parent.
Yeah, I'm sure. We're getting there. Allegedly the most comprehensive source is a case 16-page pamphlet published in London in 1590 of a translation of copies that survived because the Germans were so bad at record keeping, apparently. A comprehensive study was done in 1920 that described Stump's life and alleged crimes and the trial that took place, which I'm sure was very fast and very entertaining for those who were ready to get it on. It's like the pre-game warm-up for a fucking football game. The entire pamphlet, including a woodcut, have been put the occultist montage Summers.
Oh, Montague Summers.
Montague Summers.
Yeah.
I can't read. I've been faking it this whole time. Summers reprints the entire pamphlet, including a woodcut on pages 253, 259, in the work, quote, The Werewolf.
Yeah.
Quote.
Two pretty comprehensive books written on historical werewolfism and kind of just the myth, legend, folklore. Montague Summers and who was it? Sabine Baring Gould was another big-time collector of myths and folklore and historical records of stories about men afflicted, quote-unquote, with werewolfism. So if you're ever looking for a fairly comprehensive, actually more comprehensive would probably be the Sabine Baring Gould book because it covers the folklore and the real stuff.
So
Montague Summers is a little more sensationalist, I think.
So working backwards, as we were doing like a Law and Order style. Yeah. Probably want some evidence, right?
Yeah.
That'd be good. We're
Yeah.
going to put a man on trial for eating and execution of 18 individuals.
Yeah.
Including,
He was beyond a cannibal. That's why we didn't mention him last time, because not only did he cannibalize, but he also, I'll just say, played with his food. I'm not going to get into the too lurid details.
It was alleged that this quote-unquote werewolf had left his forepaw cut off. Then the same injury proved guilt of the man. So I guess he was missing a fucking hand.
Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a werewolf story trope that you see a lot. Like, someone gets injured as a werewolf, and then,
But who was the phone?
No, yeah. But who was phone? Yeah, nobody knows who the werewolf is, and then the werewolf gets injured, and then, like, someone in the village all of a sudden, like in that awesome Stephen King book, Cycle of the Werewolf, which I had when I was a kid because it had cool-ass paintings and drawings in it, but they made it into that movie Silver Bullet with Gary Busey, who is himself a werewolf, in fact. I don't know if a lot of people know that.
Turns out if you make a werewolf movie, you become a werewolf.
But yeah, like, the kid in the book, well, I don't want to spoil this several decades old Stephen King number, but basically the kid in the wheelchair, he shoots a bottle rocket into the eye of the werewolf, and then it turns out that, like, the new minister in town or whatever, he's, like, wearing an eye patch around town, and it becomes kind of a whole, like, Rear Window-esque sort of Bart and Lisa Simpson gotta solve the crime type story from there on. With help from Uncle... who was the guy we just said? Oh, yeah.
Fester.
No. God damn it, we were just talking about it.
Gary Busey.
Gary Busey, yeah. With help from Uncle Gary Busey and his .357 Magnum.
Nice. So, nobody really knows where Stubbe was born. Or I'm just going to call him Stubbe because there's so many ways to pronounce it. Stump,
Yeah.
Stubbe, Stubby.
Let's settle on Stubbe.
Yeah. Old Stubbe didn't have a birth certificate because a lot of the local churches had been destroyed during the 30 Years' War. You know, that whole 1618 to 1648 part we don't talk about in this show. And it's most likely that he was, most likely a Protestant, most likely a fairly wealthy farmer. At least his family was pretty good at farming, so they made some decent money. During the 1850s, he had been hanging around a it would appear that he may have been a widower with 2 children, one of them called Beale, or Sybil, who seems to have been older than 15, and a son of unknown age, probably around the same time.
So he only had 2 kids?
That's what it says here.
Weird. Okay, well, not to mince words, but his daughter soon became his wife after a while. And I do believe the other child was one of the victims, because his daughter wife ended up becoming like an accomplice or something. Yes, it's a very fucked up story.
It is. Yeah. After his trial, which obviously was a sham trial, he probably pissed somebody off, and probably had a non-compete clause thrown against them and growing food.
Maybe. I don't know.
Back in the day.
I think he was one of those people that had enough money that he probably had pretensions of being bulletproof. We can look back on shit like this now and see that someone like Gilles de Rais, for example, who is historically known as a disgusting fucking monster, but then you find the political and economic fucking little game playing that's going on between him and other nobles at that time, so it could be potentially misconstrued that these stories come out about people like this, that it's meant to tarnish their reputation. But I don't know, I feel like with Stubbe, I think there's something to his story.
So during his torture, convincing, he had been put on the rack for stretching, and he had confessed to practicing black magic since he was 12 years old. He also claimed that the devil gave him a magical belt that would enable him to metamorphosize into one of Odin's wolves.
That's that sort of magic wolf belt. That's a reoccurring theme through a lot of these old timey werewolf stories too. You wear the wolf belt. Well,
become the wolf.
Yeah, that kind of leads directly into the whole berserkers thing.
Like everyone knows, if you smear cheetah blood on a car, it goes faster.
I didn't know that until you mentioned it the other episode.
Everybody knows it.
And usually with this magical belt or girdle of wolf hide, there's usually also some kind of accompanying like salve or a balm. You put the balm on.
Balm.
No one told you to put the balm on, but you put the balm on. And then you put this balm on. It's like a weird like grease that you rub all over yourself.
Grease me up, woman!
And it's got psychoactive drugs in it, basically, that make you trip the fuck out. There's a long studied complex history and connection between wolves, werewolves, and psychedelic drugs that we'll kind of get into a little down the road here.
So the magistrate that oversaw this trial, torture, and execution had found out about this here belt and decided, "Bailiff, please fetch me this here belt." And where did he leave it? In this valley. And so they sent out for it to the place they said it would be, and there was no belt. Weird. Probably because there never fucking was one to begin with. Or it disappeared because he had been captured.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. He had operated for 25 years unmolested. Going out.
He was the only one.
He had allegedly...
I shouldn't laugh at that. Sorry.
He had allegedly gone out as a werewolf, eating and killing goats, lambs, other cloven critters, as well as men, women, and of course children, because someone has to make kids behave.
Yeah.
And
gotta have a bogeyman.
So he had confessed to eating 14 children, 2 pregnant women, which that's where we get some asterisks here, I think. Is it 16 because it's for 2?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do have this small document here. It says, documents from that time state that Stubbe, in wolf form, attacked 2 men and a woman, killing the men and mutilating their corpses. He then, non-consensual, the woman, killed her and ate her. He was discovered in wolf form and pursued by dogs and men who witnessed him shape-shifting back into his human form. In 1589, in Bedburg, Germany, he was convicted of killing many people. It doesn't give an exact number. Oh, wait. Among them, 13 young children and 2 pregnant women, tearing the...
Fatus.
Yeah, from their bodies and eating them.
There's also a quote here that states that he ate their hearts panting hot and raw, and he would later describe in his
stick to Alpo, Stube.
Yeah, for real. He would later describe it as dainty morsels, which is I feel like, you know what? I feel like something's lost in translation here because I've never ever heard
those two words put together.
Anyone except a British person say that.
You know what? I can kind of see this dude as like, once again, like kind of a foppish dandy who also happened to be a psychopath and would say things like, there were dainty morsels, in order to, like, he thinks he's freaking people out and being very, like, arch and Hannibal Lecter or something. It's like, yes, they were dainty morsels. But he's really just coming across as a psychopathic fuck.
One of the children that he had killed was his own son, whose brain he was reported to have devoured. Stubbe loved his son dearly, but at the end of all this, his bloodlust had prevailed.
Yeah.
According to this, he went out with his son into the woods, transformed into the likeness of a wolf, and ate him. Mostly the brains, because wolves have to work for their food too.
Yeah.
Not only was he accused of being a serial murderer and cannibal, but he was also accused of having an incestuous relationship with his daughter.
Yeah. It says when he was found guilty, it was along with his mistress and daughter.
Which can be confusing grammatically because it's very ambiguous, but...
Yeah. Found guilty along with his mistress and daughter, with both of whom he had a relationship. I don't even... He died a torturous death, broken upon the wheel. That's what all I got.
Ironically, the law was that it's considered incestuous and it's a crime back then, just like it would be now.
Mm-hmm.
Some laws are in there for a reason. And according to this, he confessed to having intercourse with a succubus sent to him by the devil.
A succubus?
A succubus. On the 31st, alongside his daughter /
31st of?
Missy, yeah, on old Halloween.
Oh, wow.
Well, maybe there was another party here because it says, alongside with his daughter Sybil and his mistress Catherine, is one of the most brutal on record. Oh, wow, they even drew a lot of pictures. It must have been bad because with red-hot pincers, not pokers, but pincers, followed... Oh, my God, this is terrible. Okay, all right, we're going to try and reconstruct this with the magic of radio. All right, so they put him on a wheel, and then they had racked him, right? Not down there. I mean, like they actually racked. Yeah, goddamn rack. They just went over him again and again and again. They started taking the pincers. They started tearing the flesh away from his body.
The clamps.
Yeah, and in 10 places with red-hot pincers, followed by his arms and legs. Then his limbs were broken with a blunt side of an axe head to prevent him from returning from the grave. Ow.
Well, they're not anything if they're not thorough. I'll say that much.
And then, just for good measure, he was beheaded. That's right, I said it. They removed his head from his body, and then the body was burned on a fire.
I read one source that said that they took his arms and legs off, but he kept his head, and then they
had a puppet show.
They tied that to a stake.
But hey, the government's not done prosecuting yet. This is the end. They wanted him to have some psychological horror as well. Because they made him watch his daughter and his mistress be filleted.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that first one can't be right.
And then strangled. And then they were burned along with his body as a warning to other behaviors that might be brought up by wearing a belt. Local authorities erected a pole with a torture wheel.
I wonder how PETA would react if they were around back in these days.
Well, here's the fucked up part. This is the most creative thing I've ever heard. They erected a pole with a torture wheel on it, so they can just fucking Price is Right wheel a fucking torture.
Sort of.
That's pretty smart.
I think it's like a pole with like the wheel at the top or whatever, and then it's like a super heavy wooden wheel, and then they like knock it off the top so that the wooden wheel like breaks your bones. I think that's what being broken on the wheel is.
I like the former idea because that way everyone's going to be like, oh, I don't know. I don't want to play that game. It's Wheel of Misfortune. That would be fucking terrible. Like, it's just keep them guessing. We don't even know how we're going to punish you. You have to
give it a spin and see how we execute this fucker.
And, let's see here. They erected that torture pole and wheel and the figure of a wolf on it. And at the very top, they placed Peter Srubbe's severed head.
Yeah.
As a warning.
His bits and pieces were paraded around. So people didn't get any ideas.
About wearing belts.
Yeah.
God damn it.
I can't remember. I think the Beast of Gévaudan case, or no, this is a different wolf. I heard another wolf case where they thought it was a werewolf, and they thought that their local Burgermeister, which I guess is a thing that was only in Germany, right?
Maybe.
Okay. They thought
Burgermaster?
They thought the local Burgermeister, like everyone hated him, and they thought he might have been the werewolf, so that they killed him, and then they killed the wolf, thinking it was him, like, who'd come back. And then they paraded this wolf corpse around, like, in his clothes. And they put the Burgermeister's, like, death mask on the wolf. So they, like, dressed a wolf up and, like, paraded its corpse around wearing human clothes, which in itself is also pretty fucked up.
Dude, have you ever seen a cat in a sweater? It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, I have.
They took a morbid turn on that when they did that by dressing up a wolf in people's clothing. Look, he thinks it's people!
Well, yeah, plus, like, a wolf is, like, a super majestic animal, so, like, it sucks that they were fucking almost hunted to extinction around this time, too, because of their, like, shitty associations that people put on them. I'm sure there were wolves, like, marauding villages here and there, or, you know, little fucking booty
the highwaymen
collections
and all that. Yeah, I mean, like, there's
Yeah.
all kinds of shit. In fact, in here, it looks like a 1987 study, according to Wikipedia, estimates that there were 210 attacks by the Beast of Gévaudan, resulting in 113 deaths, 49 injuries. 98 of the victims were killed and partly eaten. There's nothing worse than someone who just wastes food. Right?
Yeah.
Terrible. And then it says here that other sources claim the animal or animals killed between 60 and 100 adults and children and injured more than 30. Victims were often killed by having their throats torn out. The beast was reported killed several times before the attacks finally stopped.
Yeah. And for a while, they had the Beast of Gévaudan's body, like, on display because it was such a huge, abnormally large wolf. Like, they think it might have been a dire wolf or something that
Or
had
like
survived.
the equivalent of a pigzilla. Or,
Yeah. And they toured it and, you know, displayed it all over the place, but eventually I think it was destroyed, which sucks because it would be awesome to have a fucking, like, real-life historical monster if it was indeed this huge wolf. There's actually videos on the Nerd. They think they found a dire wolf's corpse. I mean, it was a big-ass wolf. I don't know if it was a dire wolf necessarily, but some hunters killed it, and you can see them, like, comparing their hands to this wolf corpse's hands. And then there's all kinds of just strange... I mean, if we're talking werewolves and dogmen, there's all kinds of pretty crazy fucking videos on the tubes that are worth checking out. If I can remember some, I'll throw them in the show notes. But there's quite a few that are, if they're not necessarily quote-unquote werewolves, but they are, and they're not some, like, long-haired bull mastiff or some shit, then there are some huge fucking, like, long black-haired wolf dogs out in nature. So
we've already discussed that France has a long, proud history of werewolves and killing them multiple times and then not actually killing it. It turns out that people really got pissed off about this thing killing everybody.
Gévaudan?
The Beast of Gévaudan.
Yeah.
The king actually sent out professional wolf hunters
Yeah.
to knock this thing out.
There's a movie called Brotherhood of the Wolf, I think, that is basically chronicles that story. And it's oddly enough, it's also like a martial arts film to a degree. Oh,
That's cool.
It's interesting. It's worth checking out.
So Louis the 15th agreed to send two professional wolf hunters, Jean Charles Marc Antoine Vamelesse de and Val.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
Oh my God, we'll call him.
It's not like you're just burping into the microphone.
Yeah, and his son,
I would like to buy a hamburger.
Jean-Francois. Oh my God, that was so easy. Why do they have to add all this extra stuff? We'll just call him Jean Franco and Jean Charles.
No relation.
Yeah, they sent these two guys out, and a Captain Dumal was forced to stand down and return to his headquarters in Claremont,
Weird.
Rand.
Weird.
Sorry for butchering all these words. I'm sure I'll get hell for it.
Weird.
They just could not agree on a way of hunting and trapping this wolf, and so father and son team decided that they would have the best shot doing it themselves. Jean
Baby.
thought that it would be best to kill by stalking and hunting and putting a musket through him or a round through him.
Gene, the wolf killing machine.
Yeah, Gene, the wolf killing machine, exactly. So they agreed. They thought, let's
do that.
Set a trap and we'll stalk them and follow them around and we'll see what happens. They arrived in the area of Clermont-Ferrand
Toi?
on the 17th of February, 1765. They actually had some help with them because they brought 8 bloodhounds. In fact, you might say they brought a bloodhound gang.
All right, that's twice you've used that joke.
That's
You get one more, better save it for something good.
all right. They had all been trained in hunting wolves, so they must have dropped a wolf in there and let them tear it up.
Yeesh.
Over the next 4 months, the pair hunted the Eurasian wolves in the region, believing that one or more of these may have been the animal actually doing it. However, every time they killed a wolf, the attacks continued, most likely in reprisal for killing a fucking wolf.
That's my family, dog.
Yeah. Hey, motherfucker. Thus entrenching them in a deeper feud with the wolves of the region. The Envals,
Toi?
Jean and
Toi?
other Jean, were...
Gene Jr.
Yeah, Jean and Jean Jr. were replaced in June 1765 by Francois and Antoine.
Hamburger.
We'll call him Antoine.
Hamburger.
Sometimes wrongly identified as his son, Antoine de Berthier. I can't even say it, I'm sorry. Berthier, one of the king's huntsmen. So this guy was like trusted. He's in the war party and all that stuff when they go hunting. August 11th, they organized a great hunt. The day saw the feat of the maid of Gévaudan, Marie-Jeanne Vallée, about 20-year-old. She was servant to the parish priest of the Pollock.
Who is this broad? Where they use her as bait?
It looks like they went and set up shop with her. In the company of other peasant women, she was taking the footbridge to cross a small stream when the beast appeared. Holy shit! Maybe she was bait.
Yeah, I think I remember reading something about
The master
them
bait.
doing that. Moving on.
Anyways, the beast appeared as she was walking across that footbridge there. The women took a few steps back, and the beast threw itself at Marie-Jeanne, and they later managed to plant a spear square into its chest. The beast dropped to the river and just disappeared into the woods, so no confirmation of a kill. And then the story quickly reached Antoine, who went to the scene and found that the spear was covered in blood. Tracks were found similar to those of the beast he had been tracking. And in a letter to a Saint Florentine minister to the king's house, comparing Marie-Jeanne to Joan of Arc. Oh, wow.
Wow.
Promoting the hell out of her. He nicknamed her the Maid of Gévaudan. So a lady and some people that were just happened to be around there actually got a spear into it. It's so brazen for a wolf to just go after.
Well, they kept fucking with it, too. I mean, they were going after it several times. And, think of a dog today. It's only going to be as mean as you make it.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a fucking wild wolf that's usually just minding its own. I mean, once again, it's also the spottiness of historical records about how much is this animal that was maybe had its environment encroached upon and sort of came out to feed where it shouldn't be, and or how much is it human beings taking all the dark, spooky legends and folklore about wolves and putting this negative reputation on the wolves and hunting them almost to extinction. Because, I mean, Europe barely has wolves left now because of all this fucking kind of shit that was going on back in the day.
Immense, no words about it. Wolves did attack people all the time. It's still a thing to have to worry about every now and again. And even in here, they're saying around the end of September, Antoine killed a large gray wolf measuring about 80 centimeters, for those of you in Europe, or 31 inches for those of you that are American.
Kilometers.
And it measured about
units.
5 feet 7 inches long and weighed 130 pounds. That is a big boy.
Yeah.
The wolf was named Le Loup de Chazet after the nearby Baie de Chazet. Something like that. Everyone agreed that it was pretty goddamn big wolf. And they quote, "We declare by present report signed from our hand we never saw a big wolf that could be compared to this one. Hence we believe this could be the fearsome beast that caused so much damage." End quote. The animal was further identified as the culprit in several other attacks by survivors who fingered it in a lineup.
Shouldn't do that.
And it was
Well,
recognized...
I'm going to get this wolf and really piss it off now.
Further recognized by the scars on its body inflicted by victims defending themselves. Among the people that the assailant had attacked that identified it was Marie-Jeanne Vallée and her sister. Which, there you go.
That's the lady from the bait lady?
From the footbridge.
The bait maiden?
Yeah. Fortunately, though, this did not end the attacks.
So that wasn't the wolf. Because you said it was 130 pounds?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the actual beast ended up being way bigger than that. If I remember correctly on my wolf, like regular wolf research, I think like a full-grown male gets to like 150 pounds. To see like the old-timey wood engravings and shit like that of the beast of Gévaudan, like it looked like it was supposedly like a bull-sized wolf almost.
Like a small horse.
Yeah, like just incredibly fucking huge and terrifying. And that's what the story says too, at least.
Well, see, they go on here and say that they kept knocking out wolves after, because even going into October, they were still hunting stuff down. October 19th, they succeeded in killing a female wolf and a pup, which seemed already larger than its mother. The examination of the puppet appeared to have had a double set of dew claws, which is the thumb on a doggy, a hereditary malformation.
Mutation of some kind?
Yeah, they say it's a malformation, but I just... don't believe that, but they say it's found in Basse Rouge or Barracon Beau Cerron. I can't pronounce it, man. I'm sorry. It's French words. Berceron dog breed. The other pup was shot and hit, and it's believed to have died while retreating into the rocks. Oh. Antoine returned to Paris on the 3rd of November and received a large sum of money, about 9,000 buckaroonies, as well as fame, tittles, and awards. Because someone misspelt this.
Did it all for the tittles.
Yeah. The month of November passed without any attacks being reported. Everyone believed that they had killed the beast. On November 26th, a letter was sent to affirm the intendant of Languedoc. We no longer hear anything of anything related to a beast attacking. But quickly, rumors spread of new attacks towards Sagues and Lorceres. On December 2nd...
French fries.
What?
French fries. Sorry.
French fries. In fact, from now on, any French town I can't pronounce, it's going to be French fries, France. On December 2nd, 2 boys, 6 and 12, were also attacked, suggesting that the beast was still alive. The beast tried to capture the youngest, but it was successfully fought off by the older boy. Soon after, the successful attacks followed, and some of the shepherds witnessed the beast showed no fear around cattle at all. So this thing has lost all fear of man or animal.
Maybe it was rabbit also.
It's totally possible.
Yeah.
But then you'd have reports of people go. I mean, you know what?
You're going to defective human.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. Because the odd behavior following, if you got attacked by a rabid animal and then you don't understand what happens to your body after, could make a little sense.
All it would have taken was a squirt gun. Hydrophobia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever seen footage of a person with rabies trying to drink water? It's fucked up. It's like real fucked up.
That's weird.
Like, hydrophobia is the medical name for rabies or whatever. Man, I couldn't even imagine, dude. And you know what's fucked up about rabies? It's been around this long, still no cure.
Weird. Man, this shit rolled on to like 1766. That's fucking crazy, man. It just kept going. They said that the attacks actually increased in 1766. So now they're unionized werewolves. They they tried to bait it again. They used guys posing as corpses and actually used, holy shit, man. Dude, they actually used fucking dogs, corpses of dogs, and tried to lure it out into some of these game trails and stuff. But they never got anything out of it. So they just did that for no effect. That's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
They fucking play the sad horn right here.
When does this thing actually fucking die?
1767.
Okay.
When a man by the name of Jean
Another
Chastel, yeah, another Jean. Man, that's a popular name. Jean Chastel actually knocks his fool out, and he gets a statue and a placard erected in his honor.
He probably got some tittles also.
He probably got some tittles as well. They killed the beast at St. Mary. Allegedly killed it in St. Mary. The guy was considered a hero, but that was around the spring. I think it's June.
Yeah, so it took, 3 years about?
Looks like 3 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone wants to know the fate of the remains.
Yeah.
According to oral tradition, because we can all trust that,
Yeah.
and apparently repeated by several authors, Jean Chastel would have been on the trip, but Louis XV would have disdainfully rejected him because they took the body and it was stuffed by an apothecary who had contented himself with replacing the entrails with straw and gave off such a stench that the heat made it even more unbearable. Wow, that poor bastard.
Yeah.
He's doing this. He's stuffed in the summertime in France where it already stinks. It's just a joke. These are all jokes. However, the version is called in question as the testimony of the servant of the Marquis de Abcher, collected it in 1809. They all disagree on it. It emerges,
Of course they do.
yeah, because it's not even around anymore. Well, the guy that actually stuffed it actually got sick off of it. Big surprise there.
Yeah, I heard it was supposed to be, not extra stinky. Well, yeah, extra smelly and, extra filthy. I guess it was mostly because, I don't know, it was goring and devouring humans. So maybe it had, an extra coat of human remains that were adding to the overall funk of this wolf monster.
The general consensus on the remains is that he was most likely buried in the private garden of a gentleman or a nobleman, Louis Alexandre de la Rochefoucauld. God, why do I have such a hard time with that? There's people slamming their fist on their dash right now, like it's pronounced.
Wolf Texans, give us a break. So yeah, Beast of Gévaudan.
And on that note, we're going to take a quick break and be right back.
We'll be back after this.
Hey, we're back.
So, I've got another werewolf story here, but I kind of want to preface it with a little bit of world building / possibly reality warping. There's this concept called atavistic resurgence. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
It's basically like evolutionary throwbacks, and you hear about it more in psychology and psychological terms. But it has been known to happen in physical terms, like physical deformities. So, like
the Dewclaw?
Yeah, stuff like that. You see it in animals more often, but it has supposedly happened in humans. It's a very Jungian archetype kind of thing, mostly. But there have instances of this happening with physical traits. So, you could see,
color blindness, extra nipples, enlarged teeth, an elongated coccyx or tail, excess hair, and so forth. They also pose quite the challenge to anti-evolutionary creationists.
I bring it up because I've got sort of a list of examples, of specific examples here, and this kind of plays into my werewolf murderer story that will come afterwards. There's this book called Apocalypse Culture. It's super fucking awesome. I highly suggest anyone who hasn't checked it out, check it out. It's just a bunch of different articles about just cultural horrors, basically. But there's one on werewolves and feral people. And it says here, the image of the human being of feral form is not exclusively a fairy tale or media fantasy. Approximately a dozen cases of children raised by wolves have been recorded in this century. This was written in, I believe, the 80s. So, Reverend J.A.L. Singh, the Hindu philanthropist foster father of the wolf children Kamala and Amala, whom he discovered in a wolf den outside of Midnapore, published a diary of observations of his most unusual wards in a 1941 book titled Wolf Children and Feral Man. Sing's descriptions of their appearance is haunting, and it truly is. He sort of chronicled and made note of the physical characteristics that make these wolf children, who were raised in the wild, different from your average human children. So here's the list as follows. The change of appearance. High jawbones. They had prominent differences in feature from ordinary children. The formation of jawbones was raised and high. When they moved their jaws in chewing, the upper and lower jawbones appeared to part and close visibly, unlike human jaws. Teeth. The formation of teeth was close set and uneven with very fine, sharp edges. The 4 teeth in line with the eyes, i.e. the canines, were longer and more pointed than is common in humans. The color of the mouth inside was blood red, not naturally found among men. Yeah. Sitting and standing. They could sit on the ground, squatting down, or in any other posture, but could not stand up at all. Their knee joints were big, raised, and heavy, covered with hard corns from walking on all fours. And this one is probably the freakiest. Eyes. At night, when you saw the glare, you could not see anything round about them but the 2 blue, powerful lights. Not even the possessor of the eyes. You saw only 2 blue lights sending forth rays in the dark, making every other thing invisible beyond the focused curvature. So these kids basically adapted to hunting in the dark, and their eyes glow in the night like a cat's does. Like, that's obviously not, part of the package deal on human beings. We don't see that.
We don't get that.
And finally, sense of smell. They had a powerful instinct. They could smell meat or anything from a great distance like animals. On the 15th of September, 1922, Kamala smelled meat from a distance of 70 yards and ran quickly to the kitchen veranda where meat was being dressed. Not even cooked, dressed. So yeah, unfortunately, Kamala and Amala would die in captivity, I guess for lack of a better term, at young ages. Kamala died at age 10 and Amala at age 4. They say that they died of broken hearts and kind of makes sense, like they were taken away from their family and taken to this world where they were expected to be civilized, and that didn't quite happen.
The Jersey Devil. They had the X-Files episode where it was just feral children or feral people.
And that kind of also plays into this story as well. There's a long-standing folk tradition of stories that focus on the 7th child. And in this particular tale, usually throughout Europe, folklore associated the birth of a 7th child. If it was a girl, they'd be a witch, and if it was a boy, they'd be a werewolf or a sorcerer of some kind. Well, this particular character, born Manuela Blanco Romasanta, until about the age of 6 when a doctor said, no, she's not a she, she's a boy. So it was changed to Manuel Blanco Romasanta, was born intersex. I'm not quite sure on the specifics of that. If you want to go look at a chart, look it up your own self. I didn't want to dig too deep into it. But basically it just means you're born with traits of both. So,
some are born with it. Maybe it's
Maybelline. Maybe it's lycanthropy. Since Manuel was raised as a boy from age 6 upwards and died as a man, I'm going to be referring to him in the masculine. Manuel Blanco Romasanta, a.k.a. El Sacamenteca, was born in Galicia on November 18th, 1809. Grew up to be right under 5 foot tall at 4'8". Very short. Very slight feminine features, but very hairy. So these were some of the sort of intersex characteristics that played through his whole life. He got married at 21 to a woman named Francisca. They were married for 3 years till she died mysteriously, which he may or may not have had a hand in.
Well, that's never good.
Yeah. He started selling all kinds of stuff, basically. He got a job as a salesman. He sold, pots, pans, trinkets, this, that, and the other thing. And especially tinctures, which he made himself. And this will come into play quite a bit later. He also worked as a guide for people who wanted to cross the mountains of Spain into the bigger cities. In 1843, he accrued a debt with a supplier of textiles, etc., that he either didn't want to pay it back or just couldn't, and started ducking this debt collector. So the debt collector sent this lawman after him, and the lawman would soon be found dead. Or it was either the lawman or the debt collector. Their body would soon be found dead in the forest and looked as if it had been attacked by an animal. So this is another kind of weird sort of thing that pops up in this story quite a few times as well. So yeah, in 1843, he basically took off to duck out on the debt and potentially a murder as well. He settled in a new town and got work, got a job as a farmhand where he did just about everything that he was asked except slaughter animals, which he said he wouldn't do because he couldn't stand the sight of blood, oddly enough. Manuel met a woman named Manuela. They struck up a relationship in which Manuela would apparently do anything for Manuel, including helping him out with some of his debts. So when Manuel said he needed money, Manuela left town to try to sell a property and left her daughter with Manuel. When Manuela came back with the money of the property she sold, her daughter was not there. Manuel said that he had taken her to the big city and left her with a priest to further her education. So the more they talked about it, Manuela was like, well, this sounds good. This sounds like the city has a lot of opportunities. Why don't you take me? And he did. And he came back without either one of them. And strangely enough, he had 2 letters, one from each of them, saying that they had decided that they were going to now live in the big city because of all the opportunities for their growth, economics, blah, 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 reasons, etc. This was in itself pretty strange. People were very suspicious of it, but not suspicious enough for Manuela's sister to say, hey, that sounds like a good deal. I want to go to the city too for all these growth opportunities and jobs, etc. So Manuel would act as a guide for Manuela's sister and her child, and they too were quote-unquote taken to the city and never seen again. Eventually, he would do this for Manuela's brother as well, and people just kind of sort of, he was a very unassuming character. They didn't pay him a lot of mind because he was 4'8" and he had such feminine features, etc. They thought this little guy couldn't possibly be, doing anything fucked up or untowards to these people. He's probably just taking them to the city because he's a guide. It would come to light later on. Manuel would lure these people to the woods and let the wolves do the rest, he would say. He'd steal all their things, and he would also steal body parts, which he would use to extract the fat in order to make the tinctures he was using. And apparently, this is where the term El Sacamenteca comes from, because there's a Spanish boogeyman called El Sacamenteca that was basically a fat extractor, is what it means, because they would sell the fat in these markets. And actually, hopefully I remember to put it in our show notes, but Shrouded Hand covered a story that took place in Mexico not too long ago, or is either Central or South America, where the equivalent folkloric fat extractor, Sacamenteca, is known as a pistaco. And there was like a gang of criminals who were operating not too long ago that were basically killing and robbing people and extracting their fat and selling it.
Yeah, I remember that. I saw that one.
So yeah, there's the pistaco is kind of like the Mexican / Central American, South American equivalent of the Sacamenteca. The Sacamenteca became like a all-purpose boogeyman that would sort of snatch you up in a sack. It also gave birth to a concept, a boogeyman known as the Sack Man, who was just basically a guy who fucking put you in a sack and kidnapped you.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so let's see.
He's got a man-sized sack in his car.
So yeah, because Manuel, I'm going to call him Romasanta from here on out because it's a cool fucking name. Romasanta was stealing all these things off these people that he was guiding out, and eventually this ended up fucking him because one of the relatives of one of the people he took out to the woods and did whatever it was he did to, he took a knife off of one of them, and it was a knife that he took off this woman who was given the knife as a gift from her father, and this woman's brother saw Romasanta cutting up some bread with the knife, and all of a sudden it just dawned on the guy like, oh shit, I know what's going on. And he was like, my sister would never give away that knife. Like, she got it from our dad. It's like one of her most prized possessions. So when he saw him cutting the bread, he was like, this is fucked up. I think I know what's going on. He told the law, and the law would eventually get into a bit of an investigation. They'd start looking around. In 1852, he was arrested and soon claimed that he was a werewolf in court. This sort of gave rise to a lot of, well, why don't you just turn into a werewolf? So he came up with a pretty creative out. He's like, well, the werewolf curse only lasts 13 years and it ended a month ago. So, you know how those are. So, yeah.
It was a limited time offer.
Yeah. Manuel was put on trial for 13 murders in total. In court, he said, the first time I transformed was in the mountains. I came across 2 other wolves, and I fell to the ground and started to shake and convulse. I rolled over 3 times, and by the 3rd time I rolled over, I was suddenly a wolf, and I was out marauding for 5 days with these 2 other wolves. I returned to my original body, and the other 2 wolves were also human as well, and their names were Antonio and Don Gennaro. They ran off back to wherever they are from, whence they returned to human form, so apparently there's possibly 2 other murderers that he was maybe associated with. So they said that they ate many, many people because they were hungry. It was during his stint in prison that supposedly a guard was like, oh yeah, you're the big bad werewolf, why don't you fucking transform for me there, buddy? And he was basically goaded. It was like, I can't do it. So he was eventually murdered by the guard. That's one story, at least. There's another story that says he lived to be very old and died of a stomach ulcer, but that's a pretty boring story. Although Manuel confessed, there was, in fact, no evidence he'd actually commit any of these 13 murders, and most of his victims did, in fact, appear to have been eaten or preyed upon by wolves. He was charged with 9 out of 13 murders, only because the others showed signs of wolf attacks being the cause of death. So there's a strange sort of, yes, he's associated with these murders, but also the murders that he's associated with, some were obviously the cause of death was a wolf, but then some were like, these bodies were left out, and a wolf man just came along and did what they do.
Depends on how long they've been out.
Yeah. There's sort of a is there, isn't there sort of open-endedness to maybe he really did, I don't know, commit some crimes that were very werewolf-like. Later on, before he was killed by the prison guards, there was a mysterious letter that came to the court system regarding him from a mysterious Mr. Phillips from France, who was a spiritualist and a mesmerist. This Mr. Phillips guy said that, no, he's still a werewolf. He can't automatically do it when he can't change when you ask him to. It has to be induced. And he has to be
titillated or aroused.
Yeah, basically. He has to be triggered in some form or fashion, and this guy offered to come out, and he's like, I have special dispensation from the Queen of Spain, supposedly. The Queen of Spain comes into play in this story. She wanted to find out, was this true? Was he really able to change? But before that could happen, the prison guard supposedly killed him. The whole Romasanta story plays into other boogeymen such as the Sacramenteca and Sackman, and even Coco or Kukui, the most famous boogeyman, arguably. So a lot of strange connections, but obviously the werewolf story, the wolf man, the man into wolf, the bestial nature has always been, today arguably our boogeymen are serial killers and criminals, so it's kind of always been the same thing.
They made a movie about him in 2004.
Yep.
Presumably in Spanish.
Yeah, I think it is in Spanish. I looked around for it, but couldn't find any translated ones or subtitles. subtitles. The whole idea of men shifting into wolves has a long, long history, and most people think of the berserkers, which are actually werebears, technically, because the word berserker translates into bear shirt, and this is where some of those stories of like wearing the skin and then anointing yourself with this weird balm or salve with drugs in it.
This very same type of salve was also used on witches' brooms and applied by riding the broom, so to speak.
Like, that's sort of the first instance of this, and they were like eating mushrooms, etc. But this actually goes, the strong association with Vikings, etc., that mostly comes out of mythological folkloric stuff, because Odin basically went out every full moon with his group of his posse, basically called the Wild Hunt, and it was all like werewolves and goblins and monsters and other Viking hunters and various ghosts of bad motherfuckers throughout the ages, and they would go out riding horses through the sky and hunt humans or whoever happened to be out and about, or whatever happened to be out and about that particular night that was unfortunate enough to be caught by the Wild Hunt. This whole idea of specifically soldiers goes all the way back to like ancient Greek and Roman times, because they were using mushrooms and forming sort of these soldier wolf packs. This was like a military unit like bonding ritual in which they would eat mushrooms and have these psychedelic dance parties, raves, whatever you want to call it, equivalent, and just howl at the moon. The Spartans in particular were known for doing this. There's actually a scene in 300 where they talk about how your training as a Spartan soldier begins as a child, and you're kind of literally like thrown to the wolves and have to kill a wolf to be inducted into the soldier class, more or less, or at least, survive the ordeal. As far as man into wolf as well, there's a strange sort of a side story of sorts. Have you ever heard of the cynocephaly?
No.
It means dog head. And there's accounts like this all through history, medieval history specifically, and in the Bible, supposedly, or at least biblical stories and Bible-related stories. There's these creatures called the cynocephaly, and they're very strongly intertwined with Christian folklore and mythology throughout Europe. Supposedly there was a whole island of these people written about by Greek historians, but yeah, they were people with dog heads. This sort of, I don't know how this exactly came about, but if you look into the Catholic saints, there's Saint Christopher, who is known for being a giant, but there's many, 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 many depictions of St. Christopher as having a dog head, and stories about St. Christopher actually like engaging in battle as like a weird wolf-headed man.
Weird.
Yeah, and this is like in mainstream Catholic Christian tradition. This isn't like some weird sidestepping sort of folklore to it. Like, there's all kinds of like Renaissance paintings and shit like that of Saint Christopher as a dog-headed man. So no one really knows why, like how that association started. Maybe he really was a dog-headed man, but he was also known for being a giant as well. So they think that it could be some sort of symbolism as to where he was from or what kind of lifestyle he lived beforehand. The cynocephaly in ancient Greek and Roman accounts were supposedly like cannibals, but they were like weirdly civilized cannibals. I don't know, it's strange. They got like a special dispensation or demarcation as opposed to like savages of any kind, because they were dog-headed people who ate human flesh, but awesome soldiers, and were like, they had their own civilization and way of doing things, etc., that gave them a degree of civilization that like the Greeks and Romans could sort of get behind, I guess. So they weren't just, weird little piranha pygmy people. I don't know, it's very strange. Like the idea of the cynocephaly plays all throughout various points in history, and it's just an odd little side thing. It kind of plays into some of the weird medieval bestiaries of, chimeras and stuff like that we were kind of talking about last episode on Dipple.
Yeah, I think it looks like he was pretty popular in Orthodox Christianity, but I think it was meant to be a gap between the old religions in Egypt and
Yeah. I
Right.
think there are connections with Anubis as well. Because Anubis is considered what's called a psychopomp. Like any god that sort of can take you from one realm to another, like from the realm of the living to the realm of the dead, or up to Mount Olympus, or down into the underworld, etc. And then, of course, Cerberus. I found another strange association between the Viking religion, like the myths of the Vikings, especially Ragnarok and Fenris. Fenris is like the giant chaos monster wolf that comes during the end of times and will eat the sun. There's a sort of equivalent myth in China called the Tiangbu, which is a giant black dog head that flies through the sky and eats the sun. And strangely enough, the name Tiangbu is where Japanese culture would get the name for the Tengu, which are like their weird bird ninja wizards that live in the mountains. So there's this strange, like, whole, just the folkloric, like, leaps in logic and connections like that are very strange. Japan has, like we mentioned earlier, like with the foxes and stuff, Japan specifically has another sort of side quest to all the ideas of foxes. Like they have a fox goddess called Inari. So like the whole idea of the fox as like this supernatural creature is a reoccurring theme all over through China, Japan, Korea, a couple other places I think as well, all throughout Asia. But very much a cultural touchstone in Japan. And aside to this, they have these rituals that involve dogs that are mostly not very nice from what I'm understanding of how the rituals go down. But fox spirits in Japan were known as the kitsune, I believe. And they were the ones that could like possess you and sort of cast illusions and trick you. And they were, trickster spirits. But then you have like this counter current of sorts called the Inugami, which were basically the same thing but with dogs, because dogs were like strongly associated with the occult for various reasons. But there are old folk tales of people who were like folk exorcists called Inugami masters or Kitsune masters who were able to sort of cast out dog and fox spirits, etc. So there's just a weird universalism to the idea of canines and wolves, and I don't know. I think it plays into our sort of long-standing. I forget not symbiosis. Maybe that is right. I don't know. With dogs, we just have sort of a beneficial relationship with them that's been around for so long, to where we were like, oh, this is mutually beneficial, but at the same time, we've still got that sort of monster, predator, hunting in the dark sort of association with wolves, etc. Wolves in sheep's clothing.
crying wolf.
Yeah.
One quick note on St. Christopher here.
Yeah.
This could also be chalked up to a typo.
Really?
Yeah, it's also speculated about the Byzantine depiction of St. Christopher as a dog-headed person.
Oh, Eastern Orthodox.
Yeah.
Oh, Eastern Orthodox. Okay, yeah.
That because he was a Canaanite, and
okay.
the Latin spelling of dog
Yeah.
and Canaanite, there's like a letter difference.
There's also, and man, there's like a weird.
How dumb is that? The typo.
I mean,
I'd rather have the dog-headed saint.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
like a weird, like, that makes it like the Avengers or like superheroes and strangeness added to your. I mean, most saints are just like martyrs who got cooked and eaten in pots and shit. So it's cool to have like a dog-headed one that's like running around kicking ass. Yeah, I think we mentioned at least before in our James Shelby Downard episode way back, there's all these strange occult associations with the dog star as well. Like all throughout occultism, the dog star and Sirius and ufology as well, like plays into occult eschatology and the three-eyed Namo or fish aliens from Sirius B who came and talked to the Dogon tribe. And, the Dogon tribe knew that Sirius was a 2-star system before Western astronomy ever figured it out. And, there's supposed to be this primitive culture. Sirius is also strangely enough, associated with the Egyptian god Set, who's like their version of Satan, basically. The bad guy out of their pantheon. Set, Sothis, Typhon. Typhon is like the Greco-Roman equivalent of Set or Seth or whatever. So, yeah, just the strange mythical and folkloric leaps and connections, just very strange stuff. The other thing I wanted to get into was the moon connections. Because everyone knows about, the full moon.
The moon.
That's when the transformation takes place, right? So, like, we've known for a long time that the moon has an effect on people. If you ask any police officer or nurse, paramedic, during full moons, shit gets crazy.
It's almost like they can predict it,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's beyond that. I mean, obviously, it's on the fucking calendar. If we're 90% water, and the moon affects the tides, and obviously
then only 10% of us has to swim.
Yeah. So there's like an effect on our bodies and on our, overall psyche. And the moon has always been associated with, chthonic shit and night, etc. So
in Greek culture, it's synonymous with Athena and stratagem and the
really,
owl. Yeah.
I thought it was Diana.
Let me double check.
Because Diana was the hunter goddess. Because I know she's also associated with dogs, like packs of dogs and hunting, specifically hunting stags.
I would like to make a correction.
Yeah.
Diana, goddess of the hunt, wild animals, fertility, and the moon.
There we go. Yeah. So, and then of course, lunar, lunatic. I mean, it's right there in the modern day language. And there's one specific serial killer who's one of the really, really bad ones, a fellow by the name of Albert Fish. I'm not going to go into the specifics of what this piece of shit has done because it's really bad. But he was a fucking freak. I mean, even aside from being a serial killer, like, this is the guy you may have heard of who had x-rays of all the needles in his anus that he threw up in there.
And the front bottom, too.
Yeah, all up in his chodal area. He did that to stimulate himself, quote unquote. He specifically was pegged with nicknames like the Lunatic, the Moon Madman, or the Werewolf of Wisteria, just all these fucked up names that he's probably the most modern, obvious equivalent of these old-timey cases of quote-unquote werewolves as the psychopath, as like the monster, the murderer, the crazy motherfucker that's just out there gonna snatch people up. And then of course you have sort of the associations with shapeshifters as well, which, I don't know, this is a little more hard to parse. Like when you look at like what I was talking about earlier with feral children and atavistic resurgence, there are some slight, physiological shapeshifter connections. But, I don't know, the word shapeshifter, like, it brings to mind such a fanciful phenomenon that it's...
Or a mystique.
Yeah. There's, it's almost like, it's a little hard to hang your hat on. Like, it's a little too much. But, when you take a look at, like, atavistic resurgence and the physiological changes that occur in these children who are raised by wolves and out in the wild, hell, even the psychological changes, I mean, or, differences in how they've been raised and how they've been brought up. The whole idea of man into wolf, it's a very, we like to consider ourselves, because we've been blessed
or cursed
with a conscious mind, we're with a certain higher level of awareness that we tend to automatically separate ourselves from the animals. Yet we are very much still animals. I mean, I can't remember who the quote is, but basically it took us several million years to grow a thumb, and it's going to take us another several million to pull it out of our asses. So there's still some room for improvement. But, yeah.
Oh, shit. Check this out.
What's up?
So, that effect that we were talking about from the moon,
Mm-hmm.
the lunar effect,
Yeah.
as it is called, they've noticed, like we stated before,
Yeah.
lots more going on at the hospital and with the EMS,
Mhm.
lots more going on with police, but they've also reported reproductive synchronicity
Yeah.
with the moon. Like it's,
See, I also didn't want to make the obvious, crass connection, but
romance.
the reproductive cycles and monthlies and moon cycles. I mean, obviously those are connected.
Yeah, but they also see a spike in activity with marine life and stuff like that as well,
In reproduction,
amongst other things. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Huh.
Fucking and fighting.
Yeah. Have you heard of that story, The Ocean at Night?
No.
It involves NOAA, the NOAAH, or whatever they are, the National Oceanic.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
NOAAH.
Yeah. There's a story about how they were creating like an artificial, or the light levels, the light and heat levels of an artificial sun at the level from where it is and how it would hit the water. They put this out at night, and supposedly at night in the ocean, the larger predators in the dark come up to hunt closer to the surface. And supposedly when they did this whole ocean at night thing, it disrupted things to such a degree that there was some sort of life form, they're thinking maybe, that was actually setting off like seismic triggers. Like something so big, deep down in the ocean that several countries were like getting strange seismic readings. I'll put it in the show notes, but it's because I don't remember the exactitudes of it, but it's a fucking freaky story. Like the implications of it are quite Cthulhu-ish.
So, according to this, it's been studied a lot, but no menstrual cycle correlation has been found based on several studies.
Well, no, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a biological. But it's obviously like
it's because the lunar cycle's 28 days.
It's symbolic.
It's a month.
Yeah.
And then they've also shown in a study from 1957, they did a study in Dansville, Pennsylvania, and found no correlation between birth rate and moon phases. And that was out of 9,551 births. Found no correlation.
Yeah, like I would just see, I don't know about reproductive, like as far as like, having more babies or anything.
I just think it might be a little bit more romantic when you're out with your lady friend and you're out there and there's a big ass moon.
And then, like, if you're talking, like, folkloric associations, usually when it's cold, or they had, like, those stories of, like, the baby train, because the train would come through the town and wake people up at, like, 4 o'clock in the morning and they had an hour before they had to get up, so they just, do what couples do. And next thing you know, 9 months later, you got another mouth to feed. And then they throw it off a bridge, and it makes a crybaby bridge. No, I'm sorry, I took a dark turn there.
According to this, a study into epilepsy found a significant negative correlation between the mean number of epileptic seizures per day and the fraction of the moon that is illuminated, but the effect is resulted from overall brightness of the night rather than from the moon phase itself. So it's the light reflecting off the moon itself causing it.
Yeah.
Which in a sense, the moon is still responsible for it in a way.
It's, it's
vicariously
the biggest mirror in nature, more or less. Which in itself, if you're talking mirrors, you're getting into a whole other realm of symbolism and folklore. But yeah, with more light at night, I can see that fucking with things like circadian rhythms and, biorhythms, etc. Insomnia in general, for anyone who's never suffered from it for an extended period of time, it will fuck you up, like make you literally insane. I've had a few instances in my life where it's like I've gone for periods without sleep, not drug induced, just unable to sleep, to where you eventually start. I can see how and why stories of like shadow people and stuff are associated with insomnia and fucking, unfortunately, methamphetamine use, whatever. But it's because when you go without sleep, it's almost like your dream world, like you have to dream to have a healthy brain, and it's almost like your dream world like intrudes upon your reality. And just your brain has to like recycle all the bullshit like that's been just cycling through it for days on end. And if you don't get to sleep and do that, it starts sort of projecting itself out into the world, and you sort of like see things that aren't there, and you're surrounded by ghosts or shadow people, etc., seeing things and whatnot.
I think that a way to bridge the gap between the change in behavior and the full moon itself is, if it's really, really dark out,
Yeah.
and you don't have any light, it's hard to be as good a predator based on what the assets we have.
For
And-
a human.
Yeah. And but if it's a full moon and it's lit up at night,
Yeah.
most people are bedding down for the night. You can see everything, and it's like a second shot at the daytime
Yeah.
to
yeah.
go out and fuck shit up that
And-
you normally couldn't do, because now you have the illusion of nighttime, but you also have enough light to go out and do
Just
something.
enough to,
Yeah.
Yeah, and this sort of plays into, I don't know, I kind of I want to close out with this potentially real werewolf story. What I also was sort of leading up towards is a bit of a round table type discussion. Like, the idea of the werewolf, it encapsulates so many things, like I said, like our closeness and disconnection from nature, as well as the predator-prey relationship. So, and then hunting, there's a concept for when you're out in the woods and you're just overcome with panic, and that's why Pan, the goat god from back in the day, is associated with being out in the woods and things like that. And like there was another god, Sylvanus, something like that.
Sylvester Kitty Cat.
Yeah, no. But that's where the name comes from. It's called Sylvan Dread. Like, basically, when you're in the woods and you're just overcome, like, you feel like you're being watched, or just a sense of panic and fear, just raw fear. There's actually there's a ritual for becoming a werewolf that Anton LaVey wrote in one of the... It's not the Satanic Bible, it's something else. But basically, his whole thing, it's not like literal, obviously. It's a psychological transformation that you're meant to go through, where he basically lays out this ritualistic calendar of you go out someplace that will likely induce a sense of Sylvan dread. You go out someplace that's really just fucking wild, primordial fucking forest, if you can find it, and find a place that induces that sense of dread in you. And you're supposed to just stay out there and just filter this fucking dread through yourself out into the... Just don't let it get to you as long as you can. And he says, like, probably have to go back and do it several times in the same spot, because you will be overcome with dread if you're doing it right. And then you sort of externalize all of this fear. And once you sort of externalize it, it's replaced with this more ancient primal thought of predator-prey relationships. You're more primal man as a hunter, and our closer relation to predators and wolves specifically. Yeah, man. There's something about... I know I bring this up a lot, the missing 411, and the idea of feral people out there. And not necessarily, wolfmen or whatever, but the idea that there are these people who have basically said, fuck civilization, fuck society, and have specifically chosen to embrace a lifestyle that's much more close to animalistic.
Yeah, getting back to the basics.
Yeah. Way off the grid. The not resurgence. I guess this is a bit newer as far as cryptozoology goes in the last decade and a half, I guess. But the Dogman, I mean, it's been around since the 70s that we know of. And there are stories actually about the Dogman as opposed to a werewolf, in that the Dogman is like always a Dogman. Or that maybe many of these Sasquatch sightings have been confused with a Dogman because they basically almost have the same build, except one just has a dog's head. But there's one specifically, I think it's the Michigan Dogman. It appears in 10-year cycles, like when most of the sightings take place in years that end with a 7. So there's that 7 folklore again. But a lot of the Michigan Dogman sightings have taken place in years that end with 7, and we're coming up on 1. So who knows, man? We'll see. But the idea of Dogman has actually kind of blown the fuck up. I don't know, it's become a new... I put my previous gripe out there about how fucking people are always like, it's a skinwalker, everything's a skinwalker, etc. I mean, yeah, that kind of plays into it, but I don't know, at the same time, I don't think... You would have to have the same sort of folkloric environment for where that comes out of, or like the necessary belief-related zeitgeist within the area, or people who believe in that sort of thing, or people who, I don't know. It's just highly unlikely to me that you will find a skinwalker in, say, Russia. I don't know. Things like that.
It may be a regional thing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there are like, equivalent creatures or whatever. Like we were talking about the whole vampire werewolf connection, Eastern Europe. There's a creature called the Varkalak, which is essentially just that. It's a werewolf and a vampire. Some of the stories get pretty crazy. Like they have almost, weird shamanic sorceress powers to do crazy shit. They differ from area to area, as most folklore tends to do. But yeah, the idea of dogmen is blown up, and as some of you most likely know, as many of you probably know actually, we live in Texas, and I stumbled across this case just the other day that occurred right here in Texas, very close to us, as a matter of fact. When I found it, I thought this is just some one-off silly bullshit that, people were hanging their werewolf hopes on, or, it's always good to have a cryptid for the tourist industry. Go Goatman. But then I found an article in a fairly reputable magazine called Texas Monthly. That's, in our area, this is a pretty name-brand publication. And it was talking about the same story that I'd come across before that I was kind of poo-pooing a bit. But when I saw this and started comparing and contrasting notes, a very intriguing story comes together. I'm gonna read this article from Texas Monthly. It's called "If a Mountain Lion Didn't Kill Christopher Whiteley, What or Who Did?" by Morgan O'Hanlon. Came out on August 25th, 2021. Subheadline: The sheriff blames his death on a big cat, but animal experts aren't buying that theory. Christopher Allen Whiteley never learned to drive. At 28, he had spent much of his adult life in prison, serving time for aggravated assault and struggling with an addiction to methamphetamine. That's why, on the morning of December 2nd, 2020, he was planning to hitchhike to work. Around 9 a.m., he grabbed his blue and white backpack and walked out the door of his girlfriend's house near La Pan, an unincorporated town of about 500 in rural Hood County, about an hour's drive southwest of Fort Worth. According to the Hood County Sheriff's Office, that morning he took a shortcut through a dense brush to get to Howell Road, a narrow country lane where he planned to thumb a ride to his job painting houses. But Whiteley never made it to work that day. The next day, a friend of Whiteley's filed a missing persons report, and that evening, as the sun was setting, Hood County Sheriff's deputies searched the woods between the girlfriend's house and Howell Road. Quick side note, by the way, if you're ever trying to file a missing persons report and the police tell you that you need to wait a certain limit of time, that's bullshit. It's always bullshit. In fact, the sooner you get people looking, the more likely you'll find that person alive, because after 24 to 48 hours, the chances really, really drop off. Anywho, first, they spotted Whiteley's backpack beneath a cedar tree. Then, about 15 feet away, they spotted Whiteley's body in brush so dense that it, quote, "It was a miracle that our deputies found him," unquote, said Lieutenant Johnny Rose, one of the on-the-scene investigators and the spokesperson for the sheriff's office. Soon, Hood County Justice of the Peace Catherine Gwynn arrived on the scene to determine the cause of death. She had seen victims killed by guns, knives, and car crashes, but nothing like this. Whiteley's throat, from under one ear to the other, was torn open. Small, thin scratches marked his torso, forehead, and one side of his face. He was shirtless, even though the weather had been cold. We had no idea what exactly happened. After going over the scene, we couldn't make those calls at all, Gwynn told the writer of this article. Like most small counties, Hood County doesn't have its own medical examiner, so Gwynn called the ME's office in nearby Tarrant County for help. At that point, the sheriff's office was still treating the area where Whiteley was found as a potential crime scene. But around lunchtime the following day, December 4th, Gwynn received a phone call. Had she seen the press release that the Hood County Sheriff's Office had just sent out? quote, "Mountain lion attack leaves man dead," unquote, read the headline. The release stated that the sheriff's office, game wardens, and a trapper with the U.S. Department of Agriculture were all searching for the offending animal. Please don't interfere with the process of locating the animal and stay clear of the area being actively worked by officials, said Sheriff Roger Deeds. And I will add that about a year ago, there was a mountain lion seen walking through the city of Rockwall. It was captured on a trail cam. But as you will see with this particular event, well, you'll see. Though Deeds and his deputies already suspected that a lion had killed Whiteley, the medical examiner's preliminary autopsy report prompted them to go public with the theory. According to Susan J. Rowe, the deputy medical examiner who signed off on the document, the punctures and lacerations on his neck were, quote, consistent with that of a large cat, or mountain lion, unquote. Gwen was confused about the autopsy. Hood County had its share of coyotes, bobcats, and even the occasional escaped kangaroo. But there has never been a documented mountain lion sighting in the county, much less an attack, according to the Parks and Wildlife Department records. Also, I want to interject that around the same time as the mountain lion footage, I believe it was out of Lubbock, near the Lubbock Zoo, there was a strange picture of a werewolf-like entity taken on a trail cam as well.
That was actually Amarillo. So.
Amarillo? Okay,
Yep.
My bad. Yeah. It didn't take long for the news media to seize on the sensational story of Texas's first confirmed fatal mountain lion attack, or at least the first since officials started keeping records of such events. Hood County Today says, mountain lion attack leaves man dead. The Fort Worth Star-Telegram says, missing man found dead in Hood County after mountain lion attacked him, officials say. British tabloid The Daily Mail says, mountain lion attacks and kills a man in Texas as residents are warned to keep children inside amid hunt for killer big cat. Most of the stories took note of another startling development. Just days before, a mountain lion had been spotted in the densely populated suburb of Rowlett. Okay, yeah, they mentioned it. Just 20 miles northeast of downtown Dallas and about 100 miles northeast of Hood County. Some concerned North Texans had to wonder, were they safe from lions? Mountain lions are known to have killed fewer than 30 humans in U.S. history, mostly in the Mountain West and California. No one in Texas has ever been reported as killed by a puma concolor, and there have only been a handful of non-fatal attacks in the state, all in West Texas. Although the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department has confirmed several lion sightings in the neighboring counties of Somerville and Palo Pinto, it had only heard rumors of such big cats in modern Hood County. Sheriff Deeds, who lived in the area since 1987, says he has heard stories from the ranchers that there's mountain lions out there. He also told Texas Monthly that he and some locals had seen evidence that a mountain lion attacked a horse in Morgan Mill near La Panne long before Whiteley's death. With the mountain lion story prowling about on the internet, Deeds turned to specialists for help with the investigation. Britton Stuckey, a Hood County game warden, that's such a Texas name, went to the scene the day after Whiteley's body was found. In his site visit report, Stuckey wrote that he'd found no evidence of a mountain lion attack. The usual telltale signs were all absent. There were no lion prints, feces, or territorial scrapes, small amounts of debris that lions pile up and mark with urine at most kill sites. However, he did note the large presence of human tracks and disturbances from first responders at the scene. That afternoon, Stuckey, who had relied on specialists in putting his report together, advised the sheriff's office to reach out to Texas Parks and Wildlife biologists for further expert assistance with the investigation, according to emails obtained by Texas Monthly through state open records law. As soon as he saw the photos from the scene, John Evans, then the mammalologist for Texas Parks and Wildlife, believed there was no way that a mountain lion had killed Whiteley. Some of the distinctive markers of a mountain lion attack, including clear marks from canine teeth and missing organs from the abdomen, weren't evident. An expert in animal tracking who has seen hundreds of mountain lion kill sites in person and in photos, Evans was tasked with leading the Texas Park and Wildlife Department's effort to assist the sheriff's investigation. He was especially intrigued by the lack of lion tracks in the sandy soil. So, quick aside, most big cats, especially mountain lions, will kill by coming up from behind the prey and clamping down on the neck. And they have such large canines that a bite on the neck, it looks, oddly enough, like a vampire bite. There's 2 huge puncture holes in both sides. So this man did not have that. This man's throat was ripped out from the front end. And we'll get into a little bit more forensic stuff here in just a moment. The next step was to go to the scene. In internal emails, Evans wrote that he worried TPWD, Parks and Wildlife, staff may contaminate a potential crime scene, but the agency ultimately decided to send 2 of its biologists to visit the site on Saturday, December 5th, 2 days after Whiteley's body was found. They were joined by Mike Bodenchuk, an experienced mountain lion trapper and director of Wildlife Services Texas, a division of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Bodenchuk started at Ground Zero, the dense thicket where sheriff's deputies recovered Whiteley, and then worked his way outward. The only animal tracks he found within 150 yards were those of coyote, deer, hogs, house cats, and dogs. In 2 locations, I identified tracks of a mid-sized dog, Bodenchuk wrote. Bodenchuk concluded that they were made 2 to 3 days apart and likely indicated that a free-roaming dog lived nearby. As Bodenchuk wrapped up his work at the scene, it was clear to him, too, that a mountain lion did not attack Whiteley. 2 days after his visit to Howell Road, Bodenchuk walked into the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's office in Fort Worth carrying a mountain lion skull. He wanted to show the room of medical examiners and other personnel from the office, including Rowe, why he had confidently ruled out an attack by a mountain lion. And what better way to do that than with a prop? Mountain lions kill their prey by stalking it and then attacking from behind. The cat will jump on its prey's back, digging its claws into the flesh while latching onto the neck and throat with its teeth. It uses its strong jaws to crush the windpipe, killing by asphyxiation. With a lion's small but powerful jaw, the bite marks are almost dainty, typically 2 puncture marks on each side of the throat with minimal blood. They crush, rather than tear, major arteries. Only later, hours after the kill, does the lion return to feed. Whiteley's throat, however, had been torn wide open. He had died of blood loss, and the scratches on his body were superficial, bearing none of the puncture wounds that would come with a lion latching its large, curved claws into his flesh. There were no signs his body had been fed upon. Moreover, Bodenchuk explained, lions tend to leave behind significant signs of struggle with their prey, such as disturbed leaves, broken twigs, and distinctive tracks. But the scene where Whiteley was found was minimally disturbed. It didn't appear as if Whiteley's body had been cached, a behavior whereby lions hide their kills so they can return for multiple feedings, according to Bodenchuk, Evans, and Stuckey. All 3 men said that it was more likely that Whiteley fell or crawled into the brush where his body was found. That's going to come into play later. Remember, there were trees in this area, so if he were under attack by something, he had the opportunity to either climb up a tree or crawl into these bushes and thorn briars, etc., where his body was actually found. There was also no evidence that the lion returned to feed. Stuckey installed game cameras around the site in the hopes of capturing the culprit on film, but the cameras yielding nothing more than photos of cows, deer, hogs, and a bobcat. Bodenchuk concluded that an animal may very well have killed Whiteley, but it was no lion. Without being able to examine Whiteley's trachea, which had been removed from his body by the medical examiner's office, he was unable to offer a more definitive analysis. And, I want to say right now, the medical examiner made some very odd choices. Stuff that doesn't, I don't know. It's strange. The following month, on January 25th, Rowe delivered her final autopsy to the sheriff's office. She ruled Whiteley's death an accident and reported that meth had been found in his system. The cause of death, injuries of neck due to animal attack. The reference to a mountain lion or a specific animal of any kind had been dropped. The next day, the Hood County Sheriff's Office wrote in a press release that it was closing its investigation into Whiteley's death saying it agreed with the medical examiner's conclusion since there were no signs of foul play in Whiteley's death. We will include a link to this article in our notes as well. You can kind of get there's a picture of the dense brush where Whiteley's body was found underneath. To choose to crawl under this, I don't know. I mean, who knows what's going through your mind in a situation like this, but I don't know. It points towards certain evidence, as we'll see here in a moment. Both Deeds and Rose told me that they accept the medical examiner's determination. However, they both maintain that a mountain lion is the likely culprit. Rose said there's an obvious answer to the question of what in the area could be big enough to take down a man like Whiteley, who was 5'6" and weighed 145 pounds. That would be a mountain lion, but I have no proof, he told me. Gwen said she wishes that there could have been further investigation by the sheriff's office, but I can't do their job for them, she said. The sheriff's office is quick to point out that because fatal mountain lion attacks are so rare, there are few people who have first-hand experience investigating them. None of these people who are experts had ever dealt with a human killed, Rose told me in March. I don't know what point of reference they're going off other than it would be like an elk being killed or a deer. In fact, Jim Vaught, a trapper from New Mexico who is among the few to have investigated a fatal mountain lion attack on a human, told Gwen that he was sure that Whiteley had not been killed by a mountain lion. According to Deeds, deputies began to suspect that a mountain lion was to blame almost immediately after the body was found. There was nothing that was consistent with what a human would have done, or should have done, or could have done, Deeds said. Everything pointed to a large animal, like a cat. Rose further explained the theory. The blood evidence showed that he was attacked when he was standing up. Keep that in mind as well. It wasn't something where he was lying down, passed out, or asleep, or whatever. He was standing when he was attacked, Rose said, describing Whiteley's fatal injuries. Those injuries are consistent with an animal ripping out someone's throat. If a mountain lion didn't kill Whiteley, what, if anything, or anyone, did? DNA testing could have given better insight into this question, but no test was ordered by the sheriff's office. Without a request to collect DNA, the Tarrant County medical examiners followed standard procedure, washing the body shortly after the autopsy, effectively eliminating potential DNA evidence. But Evans was startled by the decision. I was surprised that they would do this so quickly, given that the cause of death was yet to be determined, he wrote in his report. The medical examiner's office declined requests for an interview and didn't answer questions submitted by email. Keep that in mind as well. The sheriff's office did send Whiteley's fingernail clippings to a USDA laboratory, and that's federal, to search for any traces of mountain lion DNA. That test came back negative. The lab also tested 2 hairs removed from Whiteley's clothes, which were determined to be from a dog. Rose contends that the hairs came from a dog that stayed at the house of his girlfriend, Tyler Messina, who declined to be interviewed. But Whiteley's mother, Kimberly Spruill, says no dog lived there. However, she says small dogs lived at a mobile home in Dublin where Whiteley sometimes stayed. Asked if an investigation was conducted to locate a dog that could have attacked Whiteley, Rose responded with a question. Can a dog take you down, take a grown man down? I don't know that that's possible. Just silly, but okay. In fact, every year, several thousand Americans are hospitalized after attacks by dogs, some of which knock down their victims.
In the leg.
Yeah. Police even train dogs to take down adults, Evans remarked.
It's true.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen the demonstration that police give, holy shit,
Yeah.
it's terrifying.
And,
I think that may be a dog man trying to call us.
Oh, no. But yeah, the thing with dogs also is that dogs do takedown maneuvers. They will grab for your arm. They will grab something that is closer to them in order to bring you down to the ground.
Yeah, typically
it's like MMA for a dog.
Yeah.
Once they got you on the ground, you're fucked. So
we know a guy that got it.
But
they want to immobilize you so you stay down. They don't want to.
Yeah. It could have been a dog that killed Whiteley, Bodenchuk told me, pointing to the gashes on Whiteley's throat and the large volume of blood found on his clothes. Based on the spacing between the alleged bite marks as well as the size of tracks found near the scene, a medium-sized dog could fit the bill. A pit bull has a mid-sized foot and is a mid-sized dog. I hate to pick on that breed, but that's a popular breed and they are powerful enough to do something like this. However, a pit bull with its short legs and heavy muscle wouldn't be able to spring straight for the man's throat as was done to Whiteley, especially a man of Whiteley's size. And there were no bite marks on Whiteley's arms or legs indicating that a dog brought him to the ground before going in for the kill. Evans' summary report recalls a phone call among himself, Bodenchuk, Gwynn, and Vaught. During the call, Vaught, who has also investigated killings of humans by domesticated dogs, said such an attack would raise the possibility that a second person was involved and either failed to control the dog or intentionally sicked it on the victim. If it was a domestic dog, I think that raises all kinds of questions about how the investigation was handled, Evans says. Was Whiteley's death intentional? Whose dog was it? Though Evans believes a dog attack is possible, he considers an incident involving another person, whether a homicide, a hunting accident, or something else, to be a more likely explanation. In a report compiled in early December, Evans wrote that the circumstances of Whiteley's death, quote, paint an odd picture. Victim reported missing in early hours of the morning when it was very cold, but he wasn't wearing a shirt. Victim was recently released from prison, and victim was coming from a nearby house known to be occupied by transient individuals, unquote. Although he wrote that he is not a law enforcement specialist and that it is not the Parks and Wildlife Department's place to speculate as to the actual cause of death, law enforcement may want to consider the potential that this may be a homicide, he wrote. When Bodenchuk searched the woods during his December 5th site visit, he found something that the sheriff's deputies had evidently missed: shoe prints not left by an investigator. About 80 yards northwest of where Whiteley was discovered, Bodenchuk found two distinct sets of tracks, one made by treaded shoes and another by slick-soled shoes like the brown cowboy boots Whiteley wore that day. Both seemed to head towards the scene. At another site, closer to the body, only one set of tracks appeared to lead away from the scene, and they looked like they were made by the same treaded shoes. Bodenchuk said it was possible the prints from the treaded shoes were made by a nearby landowner checking on his cattle. Rose didn't think much of the footprints, positing that they were left either by first responders or neighboring landowners. Quote, people go in and out of those woods, he said. Because they already had decided there was no evidence of a crime, he added, the newly discovered footprints didn't warrant any follow-up. As to why Whiteley was shirtless, Rose said no one at the sheriff's office thought anything of it. He referred to the ME's ruling that an animal was responsible. There are graphs, to a degree, not in this particular article, but there were graphic representations of how the body was found. And the pants were sort of ripped apart as well. Like, it almost seemed like
a fly was open or something.
Yeah, it's strange. If it was a dog or a predator of some kind, it was trying to maybe drag him by the waist of his clothes and his underwear. Strange. But even the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office appeared to doubt its original analysis. During Bodenchuk's December 7th meeting with officials there, one of the medical examiners asked him for his opinion. Could Whiteley have died at the hands of a human? The ME's asking his opinion on what is supposed to be their area of expertise, Bodenchuk was at a loss for words. I had to say I have no experience with human-caused mortality. Whiteley's friends and family may never know exactly what happened that December night, but they're confident there's more to the story than just a big cat. Robert Fowler, a Hood County resident and friend of Kimberly Spruill, Whiteley's mother, believed Whiteley was killed by a person. He was murdered. I'm going to put it that way, Fowler said. He dismisses those who say that they've seen mountain lions in the area at any point, recently or in the distant past, as, quote, just them dopeheads, unquote. Fowler also has thoughts about why the sheriff's office was quick to jump to their conclusions, so they could get it off their books, he says. Patrick Feeney, Spruill's boyfriend, agrees with Fowler's characterization of the sheriff's office. They don't want to spend the time, he told me. Feeney believes that finding justice for Whiteley simply wasn't a priority for investigators, who he says jumped to a conclusion they thought would merit the least hours of interviews and desk work. Quote, bottom line is they don't want to mess with an ex-con. Deeds maintains the work was done by his office and other assisting agencies constituted a thorough investigation. In the few months before his death, Whiteley's life had been looking up. Though he'd spent much of his adult life behind bars, on June 3rd he was released after serving a 5-year sentence for aggravated assault. Before he went to jail, I was scared, Sproul said, both for his health and his future. Her son's meth use severely damaged his teeth and gums and made him hot-tempered and unpredictable. But when Whiteley walked out of Billy Moore Correctional Center in Overton that summer day, he had a new set of teeth and a fresh outlook on life. Shortly after his release, Freeney told him to buy the boots he was wearing the day he died, the same pair he wore to the Odessa oil field job a friend helped him land in August. He juggled this part-time work with his house painting gig. With the money he earned, he finally bought the car he always wanted, a $500 Chevy Blazer with a new motor and a windshield that cost another $500. Sproul said she and Feeney planned to teach Whiteley to drive the car that winter. Since his death, she's been distraught about what her son might have achieved in his life. That pain is made worse by the many questions left unanswered. Why was her son found shirtless in bracing cold? Why were the investigators so quick to jump to a conclusion about the cause of her son's death? What, or who, killed Christopher? Sproul isn't sure she'll ever learn the answers. God knows what happened out there. I may never know here on this earth. So that's the article.
That's really fucking tragic, man.
Yeah. That's yeah, it is a special scene, and that's, I don't know. I don't want to get, I'm an ex-junkie. I got no problem fucking saying it out loud. I'm, turn shit around. People can do it. Everyone deserves a second chance, and it fucking sucks that this happened to this man when it did. We giggle and laugh about, meth users, etc., but drugs are fucking insidious. I'm not going to go into a whole diatribe about this now, but I will say I can tell you why drugs are insidious, because they're fucking awesome. And they offer a short-term solution to long-term problems.
Yes, yes, they do.
I
was going to tell you, I think we actually may have the dog man on the line.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by the sound of his voice, too.
Is it French?
No, actually. It's just a little off-putting, but you want me to go ahead and try and get him on now?
Sure, I guess.
Hello. Is this the Kooks, Cranks, and Slash or Iconoclasts program?
It is. Is this the dog man?
This is the dog man you were talking about. I don't quite like the press you're giving me.
Well, I'm terribly sorry about that. It's just, this is what we have to go on, right? We're just reporting. How are you talking to us, actually? That's really fucking weird that you...
Yeah, why do you sound like James Earl Jones?
I'm using a voice modulator to talk to you. Isn't that crazy? Ha 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 ya ha. YOLO.
What?
What's that? I don't even know what the fuck's going on there. Were you ever consulted in these interviews?
I never talk to anyone about any of that. I actually work 6 days a week, so there you go. Do you have any idea what I do for a living? Those parks and wildlife boys only ever show my hands, but not my face on the television.
Well, that's fucking weird.
Well, I'm making my way the only way I know how. That's just a little bit more than the law will allow you know.
I didn't know that he was a Dukes of Hazzard fan.
Huh.
Well, that's pretty terrible that they...
Tell Rondell to stop calling my girlfriend. She's from the sea and thinks I'm magic.
Huh. Weird. Well, is there anything that you actually called in to talk to us about?
Also, your show is just absolutely fantastic. I love you, lads.
Well, thank you.
Oh, by the way, what do you think is going to come out of your war going on over there? Do you think your mumbling Joe will put the boot to their ass?
That's not this show, Dogman of Code County. We don't really cover that, so
Too depressing.
Well, it's about that time. I've got to be going. By the way, did you know that if you eat people that are high, you too will get high? Anywho, I'll be watching you boys whilst you sleep. Wah ha 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 ha.
Yeah, we're gonna let you go now.
Howl.
Okay. Bye. That's the end of the call. I think he just hung up. Okay.
You know what? His voice actually sounds a lot like I expected it to.
Yeah, a little bit. How refined for living out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some other things that go along with this case that make it strange. We kind of indicated a few along the way as we were reading the article. There are all indications that, yes, this was an animal attack. If you've seen the graphic representations. I'll try to find the video link also that we had. That was sort of that led us to this. It's got sort of, I guess you call them like watercolor representations. Like just paintings and drawings that were done to sort of illustrate how the body was found, etc. The throat is just torn out. Like it doesn't. I mean, we don't have a microscope on it, but it's done quite savagely, I will say. The tracks, there were none until about 80 yards away, they said. Usually mountain lions will leave tracks. There were, shoe tracks left around by people who were investigating. Those were probably the closest to the body. This is also likely something bigger than a dog. That's been postulated several times due to the fact they keep mentioning a mountain lion. But at the same time, as we said, dogs tend to use takedown attacks. They will, bite your arm. They'll go for the crotch sometimes, take you down. There are certain with dogs and mountain lions, or like coyotes, etc. They all have a very specific way in which they will eat their prey, their takedown, whatever you want to call it.
And remember that the coyotes and wolves and canids, they hunt in packs. Big kitties are solitary hunters. They hunt alone.
Well, I mean, I could see like lone coyotes and stuff around here. There might not, be enough of a population, or they might be in competition with each other. So there is that. The strange thing was that this man also had an opportunity to either climb up into a tree to escape or get away from whatever. Well, let me back up. Okay, he had a backpack with him. And this is another strange point of contention in this case, because he set his backpack down, like specifically set it down against a tree, almost as if he needed both his hands to like reason with whatever was coming at him, supposedly. Or he wanted to have both his hands free to fight off. But at the same time, I don't know. I mean, it depends if he was wearing his backpack or carrying it.
No backpack on your back implies that
That's
you
true.
felt comfortable enough to drop down. You're taking a break or whatever. You're stopping.
Yeah, and the fact that he like set it to a tree too. Like,
Yeah.
it's very specific.
That implies that there was an intent to stick around for a while.
Yeah, so when a lot of people are confronted by a wild animal, you tend to, act very slowly, very deliberately. All your motions are calculated. Just like, okay,
And even
good
if
doggy, I'm going to set this here, do this here.
the same rules apply for most animals, if you can make yourself appear larger,
Yeah,
then that tends to freak them out.
yeah,
And,
loud noises and make yourself look bigger.
Yeah, for the exception of a grizzly.
Oh, yeah, you're fucked.
Yeah,
It's a grizzly.
pray to grizzly bear Jesus that you're going to live.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
A black bear, you'll have a chance, but a grizzly, you're fucked.
Yeah,
Punch
punch him in the dick is what I hear.
You gotta kick him in his wolf nards.
Yeah, man, that is a throwback right there.
Thank you. The wildlife commissioner said that they found hairs that are likely dog hairs, but once again, they're saying this is something bigger than a dog. There's no takedown marks. The dog bite, or actually, also, it wasn't mentioned in this article, but they called in a dog bite, dog attack deaths expert out of Austin. And this guy concluded that it was not a dog. The bite marks were too big to be a dog or a mountain lion on the throat. Everything else is just kind of, it looks like melee or maybe like defensive wounds from what little you can tell, like as far as outside of the main, I guess the coup de grace would be the neck, obviously. That's the big one. But everything else, yeah, it looked to be potential defensive wounds or scuffling about. The fingernail DNA ruled out a mountain lion. Mountain lions, dogs, and humans had basically mostly been ruled out. Maybe not humans entirely. The point in the article where they mentioned also that the coroner washed the body, that wasn't all that happened. This was COVID was still fresh in everyone's minds. It was still a fact of reality people were dealing with. And allegedly, this coroner, this Roe woman, washed the body in bleach due to COVID concerns, which is just outside the realm of...
That seems a little excessive.
Yeah, like even if it was done out of COVID concerns, I mean, there's got to be all kinds of regulations against that. Not only that, but they had his clothes as well, like all the evidence that was taken off his body that could have given them any kind of forensic lead as well. Generally, when you have an animal attack like this and there's blood and potential DNA on the clothing is stored in a cold storage, more or less a freezer, and they did not do that with his clothes. The clothes were actually sent off to be tested for saliva samples to see if they could pull DNA matches to determine what it was that attacked Mr. Whiteley, but they had left the clothes outside of a cold storage and everything had basically spoiled more or less. Any sort of saliva, basically there was mold growing on everything at that point. Any kind of potential saliva or otherwise animal DNA they could have pulled was long gone. The spoilage of DNA evidence and the dousing the body in bleach is highly suspect. It's just very strange. DC concluded accident attacked by an animal, or no, I'm sorry, not DC. The, not coroner. Is it district coroner?
I don't think so.
The person who basically says, like, this is how...
The county medical examiner?
I put DC, so it was like district something. But they're sort of like a district attorney, but they're the ones who put on the death certificates, like, this is how it happened. If it's not, a natural death.
Well, that'd be your county medical examiner.
Okay, yeah. They put accident attacked by an animal of some sort. So that's about as wide open and non-committal as you can get.
Yeah.
And the craziest fucking thing about all this is that whatever did this is still out there. So the reason we bring it up with werewolves and dogmen is that the likelihood of whatever this was that killed Christopher Whiteley, there's a good chance that it was of equal or greater height with him. And also that as opposed to getting into a tree to escape whatever it is, he decided to crawl under the brush to get away, which is also strange. It kind of illustrates that if this were something shorter than him, then obviously climbing up the tree would be your number one go-to. But he decided to crawl under the brush and the thorn bush to hide from this thing, or put something between it and him, whatever it was. There's a lot of things about this case that don't add up. And this isn't the only one like this. There's a case in North Carolina as well. I'll have to find the specifics, but that will also be in show notes. These sort of half-assed investigations into what, well, I don't want to say, I'm sure this wasn't I don't want to call it a half-assed investigation.
I'm sure they did their best.
Yeah, these people, did everything they could, it sounds like, within the realm of their wheelhouse, bailiwick, the possibilities of what they're given jurisdiction to do. I will say the medical examiner made some very strange decisions that are just beyond the pale of reason. I don't understand some of that. But this is not the only case like this. There are actually numerous cases and I'm just talking about in America, where you have a very suspicious animal attack that has never been satisfactorily brought to a case closed. There's never been a, for lack of a better word, assailant or suspect caught. The only other one I can think of is a woman who was allegedly attacked by a pack of dogs. That too is very strange. It's just, I don't know. And these are, you don't really hear about this kind of thing unless you go looking for it too, which is weird.
Dude, I was pulling up all the stuff on YouTube about Dogman.
Yeah.
And it's every state in the South and everything west of the Mississippi seems to have something going.
Like a sighting of some sort.
Yeah. Obviously, some of that stuff is computer generated, and it's obvious.
Yeah, there's a stupid ass AI. So yeah, that's our werewolf episode. I think we did pretty good about not being overtly gruesome.
I'm inclined to agree with you.
Yeah. Next week is the biggie. It's the big one. This is going to be sort of the Halloween closer. Anything that you thought, like, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of violence, but it's also contextually necessary violence due to the historical...
Due to the graphic nature of the subject.
Yeah, that as well, yes. So, it's kind of just going to have to be in there. And we're also going to talk about some other strange theoretical violence as well. This story goes into some strange places next week, but it's the biggie. It's the one that I accidentally let slip a few episodes back if you were listening, but
oops.
Yeah. And then after that, I mean, I think Halloween, I think we've got 5 weeks for October, so we're going to have kind of a closing out that's going to be sort of a soft close after this big one next week, and it will be Halloween-y, but also just back to kind of our more general-natured fucking wackiness and just weirdos that we cover. It's someone we have talked about before, but we'll be going a lot more in depth and how it bears on the world today. What else? You got anything else to add?
Halloween's on Tuesday this year.
That's right.
So not only will it be Halloween, but it will be Taco Tuesday, which is pretty sweet. You got to warm up, eat some tacos, then go out trick-or-treating, then the costume parties.
Yeah. Me and Ghetto Boys are trick-or-treating. Robbing little kids for bags. Till the lawman got behind our ass. I can't remember the rest. My mind's playing tricks on me.
Different track, but yes, equally good.
Is it?
Is it?
I think
No, it's the same way. Yeah. He
What
must have been
else?
6 or 7 feet. We triple teamed on him.
Dropping them motherfucking bees on him.
Yeah. Then I felt like a
Whole
fiend.
hive.
It wasn't even close to Halloween.
That's right.
Like, man, hang on a second. He went from being totally sure it's Halloween and just, so who were they robbing for candy if he was totally sure it was Halloween?
I don't know. He did just say robbing little kids for bags. Maybe they were just taking, like, backpacks off of kids.
We've never really dissected that, have we?
Bushwick Bill does live in this area. If I run into him ever again, I've met him 1.5 times, I'll say. If
Welcome
I run into
to be
him
on
again,
the show, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. If I ever see him again, I'll have to ask him to elucidate.
He's got such a unique voice too, man. Like,
Yeah, he does.
yeah.
Dude, his whole story is crazy, man. Fucking, like, his life is just shit. We may have to cover him one day. I know he's definitely on my list of certain... There's a handful, it's a small one, but a handful of fucking rappers that I definitely want to cover in future episodes.
Man, that'd be insane to...
Hey, folks, if you want to get a hold of us, please do at kookskranksandIconoclasts@gmail.com. All one word. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see, we've got some holiday shows around the corner coming up. I think we mentioned those before. JFK and a special extra.
Shout out to Susan, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Big show about a big figure coming on.
Really
Christmas.
big shoe.
Really big shoe. Here's Pippo Zizio. So yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah, thanks for listening. This has been the Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast podcast. I'm Mike.
I'm Matt.
And we will be back next week with blood. Blood.
Blood.
Blood. Blood.
Blood.
Blood.
Blood. Blood.
Blood.
Blood.
Blood.
Blah, 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 blood. Blah, blah, blood. Blah, 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 blood.
Okay.
Bye, Mike.
See ya. Bye, folks.